I'm about to break the biggest rule at Hogwarts. And it's not sneaking into the Forbidden Forest. Tonight, you'll discover the secret routine that every student craves, but professors pretend doesn't exist. Are you ready to experience what they've been hiding? The brick barrier between platforms 9 and 10 at King's Cross Station looks perfectly ordinary to anyone walking by. Commuters rush past with their wheeled suitcases, completely unaware they're inches away from one of Britain's most important magical gateways. But if you happen to be a witch or wizard heading to Hogwarts, that solid-looking wall becomes something entirely different. Platform 9 3/4 exists in a space that shouldn't be possible. The magic hiding it from Muggle eyes has worked flawlessly for over a century, making hundreds of wizarding families disappear into what appears to be solid brick. Every September 1st, this hidden platform becomes the most chaotic, emotional, and exciting place in the magical world. The Hogwarts Express sits there like a crimson giant, steam billowing from its engine in great white puffs that smell faintly of coal and adventure. This isn't some modern train that glides silently along electric rails. This is a proper steam locomotive, the kind that announces its presence with deep, throaty whistles that echo off the platform walls. The scarlet paint gleams under the magical lighting, and gold lettering spells out Hogwarts Express along each carriage side. 11 o'clock sharp means 11 o'clock sharp. The train doesn't wait for stragglers, late arriving families, or students who've forgotten their wands in the car. When that final whistle blows, you're either on board, or you're spending the term figuring out alternative transportation to a Scottish castle. Which isn't exactly easy when you're 11 years old. Students drag their trunks across the platform with varying degrees of success. Some families have clearly mastered the art of magical packing, their belongings floating effortlessly behind them. Others struggle with overstuffed cases that keep popping open, spilling cauldrons and spellbooks across the platform. First-year families look particularly frazzled, still adjusting to this whole magical world business. Then there are the pets. Hogwarts has very specific rules about animal companions, and they're surprisingly restrictive for a school that teaches teenagers to turn teacups into tortoises. Owls, cats, or toads only. That's it. No dogs, no hamsters, definitely no dragons, though some students have tried. The platform echoes with hoots, meows, and the occasional disgruntled croak from a toad who clearly didn't ask to spend 7 years in a dormitory. The owls are the real showstoppers. Magnificent creatures perch in their cages, some looking dignified and wise, others appearing mildly annoyed at being confined during what should be prime hunting hours. These aren't just pets. They're the magical world's postal service, capable of finding any recipient anywhere in the world. Makes sense when you think about it. Why rely on the Royal Mail when your owl can deliver a letter directly to someone's breakfast table? Families cluster around their children like protective huddles. Mothers straighten ties and smooth down rebellious hair one last time. Fathers give awkward pats on shoulders and slip extra galleons into coat pockets with whispered instructions about emergencies. Siblings alternate between tearful goodbyes and relieved celebrations that they'll finally have their bedroom to themselves. The emotional goodbyes vary wildly depending on the student's year. First years cling to parents with a mixture of terror and excitement, facing their first extended separation from home. Seventh years barely pause for quick hugs, already scanning the platform for friends they haven't seen all summer. The middle years fall somewhere between, trying to look mature while secretly grateful for one more parental hug. Loading luggage into the train compartments requires a particular kind of organized chaos. Trunks get hoisted through narrow carriage doors, sometimes requiring creative maneuvering when someone's packed their entire bedroom. Older students have learned the art of efficient packing. Younger ones discover they've brought 3 cauldrons but forgotten underwear. Steam hisses more urgently as departure time approaches. The engine seems almost alive, eager to begin its journey north through the British countryside towards Scotland. Platform 9 3/4 fills with final embraces, last-minute reminders about writing home, and promises to behave which everyone knows are optimistic at best. The whistle's first warning blast cuts through the chatter. Students start moving toward the train with increasing urgency. Compartment doors slam shut as friends claim their spots for the long journey ahead. Parents wave frantically, some wiping away tears they swore they wouldn't shed this year. Well, that's the scene every magical family knows by heart. But the real adventure doesn't start until those carriage doors close and the Hogwarts Express begins rolling away from the platform. Because once you're settled into those worn velvet seats, watching London fade through the window, something magical happens beyond just the destination. The heavy doors of the Hogwarts Express slam shut with a satisfying thud, and suddenly, you're surrounded by the most magical chaos imaginable. Forget everything you know about regular train food. The trolley witch appears like clockwork, pushing her cart down narrow aisles while calling out treats that sound like they belong in a fairy tale. Chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. Her voice carries through every compartment. And yes, the chocolate frogs actually hop around until you catch them. Each one comes with a trading card featuring famous wizards and witches. Some students have been collecting these cards for years, trading duplicates like they're worth their weight in gold. But here's the thing about those every flavor beans. They mean every flavor. You might get chocolate or strawberry, but you could just as easily end up with earwax or spinach. It's like playing Russian roulette with candy. Smart students learn to take tiny test bites first. The real magic happens when older students start moving through the train. Prefects patrol the corridors, their shiny badges catching the sunlight streaming through windows. They're not just showing off their authority though. Most of them genuinely want to help nervous first years find empty compartments or answer questions about what to expect. Then there are the unofficial mentors, 5th and 6th year students who remember feeling terrified on their first journey and take it upon themselves to ease newcomers' fears. They'll poke their heads into compartments, share stories about their own sorting experiences, or explain why you shouldn't worry if the sorting hat takes forever to decide your house. Speaking of houses, something fascinating starts happening about halfway through the journey. Students naturally begin gravitating toward others who seem like kindred spirits. The brave ones cluster together, already talking about Quidditch tryouts and adventures they want to have. The bookish types find each other, comparing the extra reading they've already done beyond their required textbooks. Creative students sketch the passing countryside or compose poems about their excitement. And the ambitious ones, they're already networking, figuring out who might be useful connections in their magical education journey. It's like an informal pre-sorting ceremony happening right there on the train. Card games break out everywhere. Exploding snap tables get particularly rowdy when cards actually explode with small puffs of smoke. The sound echoes through compartments, followed by laughter and sometimes mild complaints from students trying to nap. Wizard chess players command their pieces in serious voices, watching marble warriors battle across checkered boards. Some enterprising students bring homemade treats to share. Pumpkin juice flows freely from thermoses, and sandwiches get passed around like peace offerings between new friends. Food has this amazing way of breaking down barriers between kids who come from completely different backgrounds. The countryside rolling past the windows tells its own story. Rolling green hills give way to darker, more mysterious landscapes as the train travels north. Ancient forests appear and disappear, their canopies so thick you can barely see through them. Students press their faces against glass, trying to spot magical creatures in the wild. Owls occasionally fly alongside the train, some delivering last-minute letters from worried parents, others just enjoying the journey. Cats prowl through compartments, making friends and begging for treats. Toads mostly sit in their containers looking judgmental about all the excitement. Hours pass without anyone really noticing. Conversations flow from nervous introductions to deep discussions about magical theory, family histories, and dreams for the future. Some students discover they're practically neighbors back in the Muggle world. Others learn they come from families that have known each other for generations. The train's rhythm becomes hypnotic after a while. Clickety-clack, clickety-clack. Some students doze off, lulled by the gentle swaying and warm afternoon sun streaming through windows. Others remain wide awake, too excited to waste a single moment of this magical journey sleeping. As afternoon fades toward evening, conversations shift. Students start talking about which house they hope to join, sharing what they know about Gryffindor's bravery, Ravenclaw's wisdom, Hufflepuff's loyalty, and Slytherin's ambition. Nervous energy builds as everyone realizes they're getting closer to the moment that will define their entire Hogwarts experience. The train begins slowing down, and suddenly everyone's pressing against windows again. But this time, they're not looking at countryside. They're straining to catch their first glimpse of something much more important. The magical village of Hogsmeade is approaching, and with it, the next chapter of every student's journey into the wizarding world. After hours of rattling through the British countryside, the Hogwarts Express finally begins to slow down. The wheels screech against the tracks, with that familiar metallic whine that tells every student they've arrived somewhere special. Outside the windows, darkness has settled over the Scottish Highlands like a thick blanket, and the air carries that crisp autumn bite that makes your breath visible in little puffs. Welcome to Hogsmeade Station, the only place in Britain where every single resident can cast spells, brew potions, and fly broomsticks without batting an eye. This isn't just any ordinary village stop. Every shop, every house, every lamppost here exists purely for the wizarding world. No confused muggles wandering around asking why the chocolate moves or why the newspapers have moving pictures. The train doors swing open with a satisfying thud, and immediately the organized chaos begins. But here's where things get interesting. The school has a completely different plan for first years versus everyone else. Makes sense when you think about it, right? 11-year-olds who've never seen magic before probably shouldn't be thrown into the same transportation system as 7th years who can probably operate themselves if they really wanted to. First years over here. The booming voice belongs to Rubeus Hagrid, keeper of keys and grounds at Hogwarts. Standing nearly twice the height of a normal person, with a wild beard that could house a family of birds, Hagrid becomes the instant focal point for every nervous first year stepping off the train. His massive frame might seem intimidating, but there's something about his gentle demeanor that immediately puts the youngest students at ease. Meanwhile, the older students, 2nd through 7th years, head in a completely different direction toward what appears to be an empty road lined with carriages. These aren't your typical horse-drawn vehicles though. They're pulled by creatures that most students simply can't see. The carriages move forward smoothly, almost silently, creating an eerie procession up the winding path toward the castle. The night air hits differently here in the Scottish Highlands. It's sharp and clean, carrying scents of pine trees and lake water that you'd never smell in London. First years bundle their robes tighter around their shoulders as they follow Hagrid's lantern through the darkness. Some of them are probably wondering if this is all some elaborate dream, especially those who grew up in the Muggle world. Then there's the anticipation building in the air. You can practically feel it crackling like electricity. These kids have been hearing stories about Hogwarts their entire lives, or in some cases just discovered magic exists a few months ago. Either way, they're about to see something that will stick with them forever. Hagrid leads the group down a narrow winding path that seems to disappear into complete blackness ahead. The ground beneath their feet crunches with fallen leaves and the occasional twig. Somewhere in the distance you can hear the gentle lapping of water against a shoreline, though the lake itself remains hidden in the darkness. "Y'all get your first sight of Hogwarts in a minute," Hagrid calls back to the group, his voice carrying easily over the sounds of nervous chatter and shuffling feet. Some first years are whispering to each other, making quick friendships born out of shared nervousness and excitement. Others walk in complete silence, trying to process everything that's happening. The weird part is how different this journey feels from the train ride. On the Hogwarts Express there was comfort in the familiar, seats, windows, snacks from the trolley. But now they're walking through an unknown landscape, following a giant of a man with a lantern, heading toward a destination they can't even see yet. The path continues to wind downward, and the sound of water grows stronger. The air becomes even more crisp, carrying that distinctive smell of a large body of water. First years start to realize they're approaching something significant, though they can't quite make out what lies ahead in the darkness. Hagrid's lantern swings gently as he walks, casting dancing shadows on the trees around them. Every few steps someone stumbles slightly on the uneven ground, but the group keeps moving forward with determined excitement. These students have no idea they're about to experience one of the most magical moments of their entire Hogwarts career. But the real magic is still waiting just ahead, where the famous Black Lake stretches out under the starlit sky, and something truly spectacular is about to be revealed across its dark waters. The moment you step off that crowded platform at Hogsmeade Station, everything changes. While the older students disappear into what looks like empty carriages, seriously, what's pulling those things? First years get something way more magical. Hagrid's booming voice cuts through the autumn air like a friendly giant calling his cubs home. First years over here. There's something about Hagrid that makes even the most nervous 11-year-old feel safer. Maybe it's his wild beard, or the way he towers over everyone like a protective mountain. But here's the thing, he's not just being nice. This lake crossing isn't just transportation, it's tradition. Every single witch and wizard who's ever attended Hogwarts has made this exact journey. Your parents did it, their parents did it. Even Dumbledore once sat in one of these boats, probably wondering if he'd fall in. The boats themselves are pure magic. No engines, no paddles, no rowing required. They just glide across the Black Lake, like they know exactly where they're going, which they do. These boats have been making this trip for over 1,000 years, and they've never once gotten lost. The The weird part is how they seem to adjust their speed perfectly. Fast enough to be exciting, slow enough that you can actually take in what you're seeing. Then there's the lake itself. The Black Lake isn't just a fancy name, it really is impossibly dark. During the day, you might catch glimpses of what lives beneath the surface, but at night, the water becomes this perfect mirror, reflecting every single star above. It's like sailing through space with the sky both above and below you. Makes sense why they do this crossing at night instead of during the day, right? But let's talk about the real star of this show, the giant squid. Most first years have heard rumors about it on the train ride over. Some kid's older brother always has a story about tentacles the size of tree trunks. Well, here's the truth. The giant squid is absolutely real, and it does sometimes surface during these crossings. But here's what nobody tells you. It's basically the world's largest, friendliest pet. This squid has been living in the lake for centuries, and it's never hurt a single student. Sometimes it'll pop up just to say hello, sending gentle ripples across the water. A few lucky students have even seen it playing with the Gryffindor Quidditch team during summer practices. The real magic happens when Hogwarts Castle finally comes into view. Nothing, and I mean nothing, can prepare you for that first glimpse. The castle rises from the landscape, like something out of a dream. Towers stretching toward the stars, windows glowing with warm golden light, and more turrets and battlements than you can count. It's massive in a way that doesn't make sense until you see it. The pictures in Hogwarts, the history don't do it justice, neither do the stories your parents tell. Every first year goes quiet during this moment. Even the chattiest kids from the train ride fall silent. You're looking at your home for the next 7 years, not just a school home. Those windows aren't just pretty lights. They're classrooms where you'll learn to turn beetles into buttons and brew potions that can heal broken bones. Those towers aren't just decoration. They're where you'll map the stars, and maybe catch your first glimpse of a real prophecy. The boats seem to slow down even more as you get closer, like they understand this moment needs to last. Some students try to count the windows, impossible task by the way. Others attempt to spot which tower might house their future dormitory. The smart ones just sit back and let the whole experience wash over them. What really gets me is how the reflection works. The castle's lights don't just bounce off the water, they seem to sink deep into the lake, creating this double image that makes everything feel twice as magical. It's like the castle exists in two worlds at once, the real one above the water, and this shimmering mysterious version below. Hagrid usually stays quiet during this part too. He's made this crossing thousands of times, but watch his face carefully. He still gets that same wonderstruck expression as the first years. That tells you something important about the kind of place you're heading toward. Even the people who work there never get tired of the magic. As the boats finally approach the castle's base, you can hear the gentle lapping of water against ancient stone. The walls rise up from the lake itself, built right into the rock foundation. Smart design really makes the castle nearly impossible to attack from the water. Not that anyone's tried in the last few hundred years. The crossing ends, but the real adventure, that's just getting started. Because waiting beyond those massive doors is something even more nerve-wracking than a midnight boat ride across a lake full of magical creatures. The massive wooden doors of Hogwarts Castle swing open with a creak that echoes through the Scottish Highlands. These aren't your average front doors. They stretch 3 full stories high, carved with intricate magical symbols that seem to shift and change when nobody's looking directly at them. Well, almost nobody. First-year students step inside and immediately crane their necks upward, mouths hanging open like they've never seen a ceiling before. The entrance hall could fit an entire cathedral inside it, with stone walls that rise so high the top disappears into shadow. Floating candles drift lazily overhead, dripping absolutely no wax because magic apparently solved that annoying problem centuries ago. But here's where things get properly magical. The staircases don't just go up and down, they move. That's right. These stone staircases shift positions whenever they feel like it, rotating between floors like some massive ancient elevator system designed by someone with a twisted sense of humor. Students learn quickly to check if their staircase is still there before taking that confident first step. Nothing ruins your cool first impression quite like stepping into empty air. The walls themselves tell stories through hundreds of moving portraits. These aren't photographs. They're actual painted people who chat, gossip, and occasionally leave their frames to visit friends in other paintings. Some portraits wave enthusiastically at newcomers, while others peer down with scholarly disapproval at the muddy footprints being tracked across their precious marble floors. Then there are the suits of armor. Dozens of them line the corridors, standing at attention like metallic guards who've been on duty for about 600 years. The weird part is they're completely empty. No bones, no ghosts, just enchanted metal that occasionally clanks when students walk too close. Some armor pieces are friendly and will point you in the right direction if you're lost. Others are grumpy and might deliberately send you to the wrong floor just for entertainment. Let's not forget the most welcoming sight of all, the Hogwarts staff waiting to greet new arrivals. Professor McGonagall stands near the entrance with her trademark stern expression that somehow manages to be reassuring rather than terrifying. Her green robes are perfectly pressed, her hat sits at precisely the right angle, and her eyes miss absolutely nothing as she counts heads and mentally notes which students look ready to cause trouble. Professor Flitwick, the charms teacher, practically bounces on his toes with excitement as he watches first years discover floating candles for the first time. Professor Sprout brushes dirt off her greenhouse gloves while chatting with students about the magical plants they'll soon encounter. Even the intimidating Professor Snape lurks in the shadows, his black cloak billowing dramatically as he observes the new arrivals with what might charitably be called professional interest. The entrance hall buzzes with nervous chatter as students from the boats reunite with friends who took the carriages. Older students stride through confidently, barely glancing at the magical wonders that still make first years stop and stare. House prefects move through the crowd, answering questions and preventing anyone from wandering off into the castle's more dangerous corridors. Some students instinctively huddle together, overwhelmed by the sheer size and strangeness of everything. Others immediately start exploring, trying to peek behind tapestries or get a closer look at the moving portraits. The smart ones stay close to their classmates because getting lost in Hogwarts on your first night is a tradition nobody wants to experience. The magical candles cast dancing shadows that make the carved stone gargoyles appear to grin and wink. Ancient tapestries depicting famous wizarding battles flutter gently despite the complete absence of any breeze. Every surface seems to hold some secret, some bit of magic waiting to be discovered by curious students over the coming years. Makes sense, right? This is the moment when Hogwarts stops being just a name in a letter and becomes real. The castle that will serve as home for the next 7 years reveals itself in all its impossible, wonderful, slightly terrifying glory. Students who walked through those doors as nervous children begin their transformation into proper witches and wizards. The noise level rises as more students filter in from the lake crossing and carriage rides. House ghosts begin materializing through walls, adding their own ethereal presence to the welcoming committee. Nearly headless Nick adjusts his ruff with transparent fingers, while the Fat Friar beams at everyone with supernatural cheerfulness. But all this magnificent chaos serves as mere preparation for what comes next. Because standing in the entrance hall, surrounded by centuries of magic and tradition, is just the beginning. The real magic, the moment that will determine each student's place in this world, waits just beyond those towering doors that lead into the Great Hall. The massive oak doors swing shut behind the first years, and suddenly the Great Hall stretches before them, like something from a dream. 4 long tables packed with older students turn to stare at the nervous newcomers, shuffling forward. But here's the thing that catches everyone off guard. There's a raggedy old hat sitting on a 3-legged stool at the front of the hall, and it's about to burst into song. The Sorting Hat clears its throat. Yes, hats can apparently do that at Hogwarts, and launches into a completely original tune that it's composed just for this year. Nobody knows what the song will be about until it happens. Sometimes it's a cheerful ditty about house unity, other times it warns about dark times ahead. The hat's been doing this for over 1,000 years, which means it's written more songs than most professional musicians ever will. Then comes the moment every first year has been dreading and anticipating since they got their Hogwarts letter. Professor McGonagall calls names alphabetically, and one by one, 11-year-olds shuffle forward to have an ancient magical hat plonked onto their heads. The hat doesn't just randomly assign houses either, it's reading their thoughts, their fears, their ambitions. Talk about an invasion of privacy on your first day of school. Gryffindor gets the brave ones, though they're often the type who think jumping off the Astronomy Tower with a makeshift parachute sounds like fun. Hufflepuff welcomes the loyal and hard-working students, plus anyone the hat isn't quite sure what to do with minds. Though don't let a Hufflepuff hear you say that. Ravenclaw attracts the clever minds, the ones who actually enjoy doing extra homework for fun. And Slytherin, well, they're ambitious and cunning, which sounds ominous but mostly means they're really good at getting out of detention. The weird part is how the hat sometimes takes forever to decide. These are called hat stalls, and they happen when a student could genuinely fit into multiple houses. Imagine sitting there with hundreds of people watching while a hat debates your entire personality out loud. The longest recorded hat stall lasted nearly 6 minutes, which probably felt like 6 hours to the poor kid involved. But wait, there's more to this ceremony than just academic sorting. Each house has its own ghost who shows up to welcome new members. Nearly headless Nick floats over to cheer for new Gryffindors, still trying to keep his barely attached head from flopping around. The fat friar beams at fresh Hufflepuffs with the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely loves everyone. The Grey Lady glides silently toward new Ravenclaws, mysterious as always, and the Bloody Baron, well, he terrifies the new Slytherins just enough to let them know their house doesn't mess around. What makes this moment so significant isn't just the house assignment, it's that this decision shapes the next 7 years of a student's life. Your dormitory, your closest friends, your table at meals, even your Quidditch team allegiances all stem from whatever the hat decides in those few seconds. Some families have traditions spanning generations in the same house, while others get the shock of their lives when their kid ends up somewhere completely unexpected. The Great Hall itself adds to the magic of the moment. Those floating candles cast dancing shadows across the enchanted ceiling that mirrors the night sky outside. 4 enormous banners hang from the walls, the red and gold lion of Gryffindor, the yellow and black badger of Hufflepuff, the blue and bronze eagle of Ravenclaw, and the green and silver serpent of Slytherin. When the hat shouts out a house name, that entire table erupts in cheers while their banner seems to glow a little brighter. Let's not forget the older students watching this whole spectacle unfold. They remember their own sorting, probably cringing at how nervous they were, or laughing at how different they've become since that first night. The 7th years look practically ancient to the first years, though they're only 17. Prefects lean forward to get a good look at the newcomers they might be responsible for helping throughout the year. The statistics are pretty evenly split among the houses, though Gryffindor tends to get slightly fewer students, probably because true bravery is rarer than people think. The hat never explains its reasoning afterward either. Once it's made its decision, that's it. No appeals, no second chances, no switching houses because you don't like the dormitory decor. As the last first year joins their new house table, and the sorting hat is carried away for another year, something shifts in the Great Hall atmosphere. The formal ceremony gives way to anticipation for what everyone's really been waiting for. After all, getting sorted is exhausting work, and there's nothing quite like working up an appetite from pure nervousness. The empty golden plates and goblets on every table seem to shimmer with promise, and Dumbledore rises from the staff table with that familiar twinkle in his eyes. The sorting hat has barely finished its song when something magical happens that makes every first year's stomach growl in perfect harmony. The empty golden plates scattered across the 4 house tables suddenly burst to life with more food than most students have ever seen in one place. We're talking about dozens of dishes appearing out of thin air, steam rising like morning mist, and aromas that could wake the dead. Roast beef glistens under the floating candles, carved so perfectly it falls apart at the touch of a fork. Mountains of mashed potatoes sit next to boats of gravy that never seem to empty, no matter how much gets ladled out. The weird part, nobody in the kitchen is running around frantically trying to serve 400 people. House elves handle all of this behind the scenes, working magic that would make any restaurant chef weep with envy. Then there's the pumpkin juice. Every goblet fills itself with this orange nectar that tastes nothing like the pumpkin spice stuff muggles obsess over. This is pure autumn in liquid form. Sweet but not cloying, and somehow always the perfect temperature. Some students try butterbeer instead, though that's usually reserved for special occasions and older students. But let's talk about the real star of this feast, treacle tart. This dessert appears like clockwork, golden and sticky, with a pastry crust that crumbles just right. One bite transports you to your grandmother's kitchen, assuming your grandmother happened to be a wizard who could infuse desserts with actual happiness. The first years who've never had proper treacle tart before get this look of pure wonder that makes the older students grin. Professor Dumbledore rises from the staff table, his long silver beard catching the candlelight like spun moonbeams. The Great Hall falls silent faster than you'd think possible with 400 teenagers. His welcoming speech changes every year, but it always hits the same notes. Warnings about the Forbidden Forest, reminders that the 3rd floor corridor might kill you, and genuine warmth that makes homesick 11-year-olds feel a bit better about being so far from home. The spectacular floating candles deserve their own mention here. These aren't just any candles stuck to the ceiling with magic. They hover at different heights, creating layers of warm light that dance across the enchanted ceiling above. That ceiling, by the way, reflects the night sky outside, complete with slowly moving clouds and actual twinkling stars. Makes sense, right? Why have a boring stone ceiling when you can dine under the cosmos? What really melts those first-year nerves, though, isn't just the food or the magic. It's the laughter echoing off the stone walls. Older students share stories about their own first nights, comparing how terrified they were to how brave they're pretending to be now. The Weasley twins, when they were still students, were famous for their dinner entertainment, turning bread rolls into temporary pets or making their goblets sing opera. Each house table develops its own atmosphere during the feast. Gryffindors tend to get loud and boisterous, with students competing to tell the most outrageous summer stories. Ravenclaws discuss the more intellectual implications of their upcoming classes, already planning study groups before they've attended a single lesson. Hufflepuffs make sure every first year feels included, passing dishes, and making introductions with characteristic kindness. And Slytherins, they're busy sizing up the competition and forming strategic alliances over the shepherd's pie. House ghosts make their appearances too, gliding through the tables and occasionally through students' dinners, which is exactly as gross as it sounds. Nearly headless Nick loves showing off his partially severed head to horrified first years, while the Fat Friar tells anyone who'll listen about his days as a living monk. The Bloody Baron keeps to himself mostly, though his presence alone is enough to keep the Slytherin table in line. The food keeps appearing throughout the evening: Yorkshire pudding, bangers and mash, spotted dick with custard, and enough vegetables to satisfy even the most health-conscious parents back home. Everything tastes better when it's made with magic, though nobody can quite explain why. Maybe it's the enchanted ovens, or perhaps the house elves add extra care to every dish. As the feast winds down and the last crumbs of treacle tart disappear from the plates, Dumbledore stands once more. This time he's announcing the end of dinner and the beginning of something equally important. The prefects begin gathering their first years, house scarves wrapped snugly around necks, preparing for the next adventure. Well, the welcoming feast might be ending, but the real magic is just beginning. Because now comes the moment every first year has been wondering about since they stepped off the Hogwarts Express, discovering where they'll actually sleep in this massive, mysterious castle. After that incredible welcoming feast where everyone stuffed themselves silly with magical food, it's time for the real adventure to begin. House prefects stand up from their tables, calling out instructions that echo through the Great Hall. First years, follow me, they shout, their voices cutting through the chatter of hundreds of excited students. The journey to each house's common room feels like a treasure hunt, where only the right people get to find the prize. Every house guards their entrance like it's the most valuable secret in the wizarding world. And honestly, it pretty much is. These passwords don't just keep strangers out, they're the first real taste of belonging somewhere special. Gryffindor first years follow their prefect through corridors lined with moving portraits that whisper and wave as they pass. The fat lady's portrait hangs in an ornate golden frame, her pink silk dress rustling as she peers down at the nervous newcomers. Password? She asks in her melodious voice, and the prefect announces it clearly, something brave-sounding that changes every week. The portrait swings forward like a door, revealing a circular hole in the wall that leads to warmth and belonging. But here's where things get interesting. Slytherin students descend into the dungeons, their footsteps echoing off cold stone walls. Their entrance hides behind a bare stretch of wall that looks completely ordinary, until someone speaks the right words. The stone slides away silently, revealing a passage that leads to their sanctuary beneath the Black Lake. Green light filters through the windows, creating an underwater atmosphere that feels both mysterious and oddly comforting. Then there's Hufflepuff, whose entrance sits near the castle's kitchens in the basement. Students must tap a particular barrel in a rhythm that matches Helga Hufflepuff. Get it wrong, and the barrel next to it will shower you with vinegar, a soggy reminder that even the kindest house has its defenses. The entrance leads to a cozy tunnel lined with plants and warm earth smells. Ravenclaw takes a completely different approach that'll make your brain hurt in the best way. Their tower entrance has no password at all. Instead, a bronze eagle knocker asks riddles that change every single time. What gets wetter the more it dries? It might ask, bronze beak clicking thoughtfully. Only those clever enough to puzzle out the answer gain entry. Wrong answers mean waiting until someone else solves it for you. Walking into any house common room feels like stepping into a living, breathing extension of your personality. Gryffindor's common room practically roars with energy. Scarlet and gold tapestries hang from stone walls, and the fireplace crackles with flames that seem to dance with extra enthusiasm. Squashy armchairs covered in worn velvet cluster around low tables, perfect for late-night conversations about Quidditch strategy or upcoming adventures. Slytherin's common room stretches beneath the lake like an elegant underwater palace. Black leather sofas arrange themselves around a magnificent fireplace that provides the only warm light in the cool green-tinted space. Carved serpents wind their way up the columns, and large windows show the murky depths of the Black Lake where strange creatures sometimes swim past. The atmosphere whispers of ambition and ancient secrets. Well, Hufflepuff's space feels like the coziest hobbit hole you never knew you wanted to live in. Low ceilings create intimate spaces filled with comfortable yellow furniture that practically begs you to curl up with a good book. Plants hang from every available surface, their leaves creating natural curtains that filter the warm light from copper lamps. The air always smells faintly of fresh-baked bread from the nearby kitchens, and the weird part is how Ravenclaw's tower common room manages to feel both spacious and cozy simultaneously. Arched windows offer stunning views of the mountains and grounds, while midnight blue carpets muffle footsteps. Bronze accents catch the light from stars painted on the domed ceiling that actually twinkle like the real night sky. Bookshelves line the walls, naturally, filled with volumes that students often discover contain more than just homework help. Dormitories continue each house's theme with precision that borders on magical obsession. 4 poster beds hang with curtains in house colors, while personal trunks sit at the foot of each bed like faithful guardians of treasured possessions. Windows offer different views depending on your house. Gryffindor sees the grounds and Quidditch pitch, while Slytherin watches fish and underwater plants sway in lake currents. House emblems appear everywhere, from bed hangings to the borders of mirrors. These aren't just decorations, they're constant reminders of the qualities each house values most. Lions, eagles, badgers, and serpents watch over students as they sleep, study, and grow into the witches and wizards they're meant to become. The magic doesn't stop at decoration though. Each common room maintains perfect temperature year-round. Fires never go out, and somehow the furniture always arranges itself for maximum comfort and conversation. But perhaps the most magical thing happens gradually. These spaces transform strangers into family, through shared late-night conversations, collaborative homework sessions, and quiet moments of homesickness that become easier to bear when surrounded by understanding friends. Tomorrow morning brings the real test of navigating this magical castle, starting with that first crucial meal, where everyone tries to figure out their new daily routine. The dormitories at Hogwarts aren't just bedrooms, they're magical sanctuaries designed to make 11-year-olds feel at home while they're hundreds of miles from their families. Well, assuming they can actually fall asleep on their first night in a castle filled with moving portraits and floating candles. Most first years wake up completely disoriented. Where am I? What's that weird smell? Why is my bed curtained like I'm royalty? The thick velvet hangings around each 4-poster bed aren't just for decoration, they're enchanted for privacy and warmth. Pull them shut, and you've got your own little world where homesickness can't quite reach you. But here's what really gets students talking: the house elves. These magical creatures work through the night, tidying up the chaos that teenagers naturally create. They replace dirty robes with clean ones, organize scattered textbooks, and somehow manage to fold clothes that were definitely thrown on the floor in frustration the night before. The weird part is that most students never actually see them working. House elves prefer to stay invisible, appearing only when absolutely necessary. Then there's the morning tea service that arrives precisely 15 minutes before each student needs to wake up. How do the house elves know everyone's internal clock? Nobody's figured that out yet. The tea appears on bedside tables in delicate china cups, steaming hot and perfectly sweetened to each student's taste. Some students get Earl Grey, others get chamomile, and a few lucky ones discover magical blends that taste like liquid sunshine. Let's not forget the windows in each dormitory tell stories about the world outside. Gryffindor Tower windows overlook the Quidditch pitch and the Forbidden Forest, giving students front row seats to morning mist rolling across the grounds. Hufflepuff dormitories sit near the kitchens, so wonderful smells of fresh bread and bacon drift up through the floors. Ravenclaw Tower offers panoramic views of the Scottish Highlands, while Slytherin's underground rooms feature enchanted windows showing the depths of the Black Lake. Sometimes a tentacle from the giant squid waves past, which either thrills or terrifies new students. The most surprising discovery: these rooms are magically soundproofed for nighttime comfort. Snoring roommates, midnight conversations and homesick crying sessions stay contained within each dormitory. Nobody wants their emotional moments broadcast to the entire house, right? The enchantment works so well that students often oversleep because they can't hear the usual morning sounds of castle life beginning. Each bed comes equipped with warming charms built into the mattresses. Scotland gets cold, especially in a stone castle that's over 1,000 years old. The magical heating system responds to each student's body temperature, keeping everyone comfortable without creating stuffy, overheated rooms. Some students discover they sleep better at Hogwarts than they ever did at home. Storage space seems impossible until students realize their trunks are enchanted with expansion charms. Everything fits somehow. Robes, textbooks, personal treasures from home, and mysterious items accumulated during the school year. It all disappears neatly into containers that shouldn't logically hold so much stuff. Makes sense, right? But the real magic happens in those quiet moments before dawn when homesickness hits hardest. House colors and emblems decorating each dormitory aren't just school spirit, they're psychological comfort. Gryffindor's warm reds and golds feel like courage wrapped in fabric. Hufflepuff's yellows and blacks create a honey-sweet sense of belonging. Ravenclaw's blues and bronzes inspire calm wisdom, while Slytherin's greens and silvers suggest sophisticated strength. The strangest part about waking up at Hogwarts isn't the magical surroundings, it's how quickly everything starts feeling normal. Second-week students barely notice house elves' nighttime activities or floating candles that never seem to burn out. Third years take self-organizing wardrobes for granted. By Christmas, most students can't imagine sleeping anywhere else. Some students develop early morning rituals. They wake before sunrise, not from anxiety, but from pure excitement about another day at the most extraordinary school on earth. These students often sit by dormitory windows, watching the castle grounds come alive. Groundskeeper Hagrid emerges from his hut to tend magical creatures. Owls return from overnight deliveries. Ghosts finish their nighttime wanderings and fade into their daytime hiding spots. The transition from sleep to wakefulness at Hogwarts feels different from anywhere else. Students stretch, yawn, and gradually remember they're living inside what amounts to a 1,000-year-old magical fortress. Every morning brings that split second of wondering if yesterday was all a dream before reality settles in. And speaking of morning realities, nothing quite prepares students for their first trip down to the Great Hall for breakfast, where hundreds of fellow witches and wizards gather under a sky that changes with the weather outside. The morning chaos at Hogwarts begins long before most students roll out of their four-poster beds. House elves have already been bustling around the Great Hall since 5 in the morning, setting up what might be the most important meal of the day. Well, they'd argue every meal is important, but breakfast sets the tone for everything that follows. Walking into the Great Hall for breakfast feels like entering organized pandemonium. The massive space stretches from wall to wall, with 4 long house tables running parallel to each other. Each table could easily seat 70 students, and during peak breakfast hours they nearly do. The Gryffindor table buzzes with animated conversations about Quidditch strategies, while Ravenclaw students often have their noses buried in textbooks between bites of toast. But here's where things get interesting. Breakfast isn't served at a fixed time like in most schools. The Great Hall opens its doors at 6:30 in the morning, and keeps serving until 8:30. This flexible schedule accommodates everything from early rising Hufflepuffs who prefer quiet morning meals to night owl Slytherins who stumble in just minutes before the cutoff time. The food selection would make any 5-star hotel jealous. Rows upon rows of perfectly golden toast appear in neat racks, accompanied by every type of jam and marmalade you could imagine. Some flavors don't even exist in the Muggle world. Pixie berry jam tastes like sunshine mixed with laughter, though it does make your teeth tingle for about 10 minutes after eating it. Then there's the porridge situation. Most students initially wrinkle their noses at the thought of porridge for breakfast, but Hogwarts porridge is different. It arrives steaming hot in large cauldrons, and here's the magical twist. It knows exactly how you like it prepared. Prefer it sweet with honey and cinnamon? Done. Want fresh berries stirred in? They appear instantly. Some students spend their entire 7 years trying to figure out how the porridge reads their preferences. Eggs come prepared in every conceivable style. Scrambled, fried, poached, or even prepared in ways that would puzzle Muggle chefs. Dragon egg omelettes are served occasionally as special treats, though they're considerably smaller than you might expect and taste remarkably similar to chicken eggs with a slight peppery kick. Let's not forget the morning entertainment. Hundreds of owls begin their daily mail delivery right around 7 o'clock. The sight of them swooping through the Great Hall never gets old, even for 7th years. They arrive in waves, creating temporary aerial traffic jams near the enchanted ceiling. Some owls are remarkably efficient, dropping letters precisely into outstretched hands. Others seem to enjoy the dramatic flair, circling their intended recipients 3 times before finally delivering their cargo. The weird part is how owls remember every student's preferred breakfast timing. Regular correspondence from home typically arrives right when students sit down to eat. Birthday packages somehow always show up at exactly the right moment, often with treats that perfectly complement whatever's already on the table. Morning conversations at breakfast follow predictable patterns depending on the day of the week. Mondays bring groans about upcoming assignments and weekend adventures that ended too quickly. Fridays buzz with excitement about Hogsmeade visits and planned mischief. But the most interesting breakfast conversations happen on random Wednesday mornings, when someone inevitably shares a bizarre dream involving their potions professor or a talking portrait. House dynamics become crystal clear during breakfast hours. Gryffindors tend to cluster in animated groups, gesturing wildly while describing their latest adventures or close calls with detention. Hufflepuffs often share food generously, making sure quiet first years don't sit alone. Ravenclaws frequently engage in intellectual debates that somehow connect breakfast choices to complex magical theory. Slytherins master the art of looking perfectly put together, even at 7 in the morning, which honestly seems like magic in itself. The most crucial breakfast activity involves checking class schedules. Timetables change regularly, especially for older students taking advanced courses. Nothing ruins a peaceful morning like realizing you have double potions instead of the free period you'd been counting on. Students develop elaborate systems for schedule checking, often involving detailed comparisons with housemates to avoid any nasty surprises. Teachers occasionally join students for breakfast, which always creates interesting dynamics. Professor McGonagall's presence at the Gryffindor table usually means someone's in trouble or about to receive important news. Professor Flitwick often chats enthusiastically with students about upcoming charms lessons, his excitement infectious even at 7 in the morning. The final minutes of breakfast service bring a particular kind of energy. Students gulp down last sips of pumpkin juice, grab final pieces of toast, and begin the migration toward their first classes. Conversations shift from leisurely morning chatter to quick reminders about homework and study groups. Makes sense that breakfast would be the foundation for everything that follows, right? Because once those great hall doors close at 8:30, the real academic adventure begins with that first morning class waiting just down the corridor. After all that excitement from breakfast and getting schedules sorted, first-year students hurry through stone corridors to find their first proper class. The moving staircases seem determined to make everyone late, switching directions just as students step onto them. But there's something magical about that first morning rush, robes swirling, books clutched tight, and everyone trying to look like they know where they're going. Professor Flitwick's charms classroom sits on the second floor, and honestly, the man himself is almost as enchanting as the spells he teaches. Standing barely taller than some of his students, Flitwick has to use a stack of books just to see over his desk properly. He's got this infectious enthusiasm that makes even the most nervous first year feel like they might actually master magic. Walking into charms class feels like entering a wizard's workshop. Shelves line every wall, packed with spellbooks that occasionally flutter their pages on their own. Wand holders are built into each desk because apparently rolling wands off tables and watching them clatter to the floor gets old fast. The room smells like parchment and something faintly sparkly, which makes sense once you realize that successful charm work leaves behind traces of magical energy. Then there's the lesson itself. Wingardium Leviosa becomes every first year's introduction to real magic. Sure, they've all done accidental magic before, that's how they got their Hogwarts letters in the first place. But deliberately making a feather float, that's different. That's controlled magic, and it's harder than it looks. Flitwick demonstrates first, naturally. His feather rises smooth as silk, dancing through the air like it's performing ballet. He makes it look effortless, which gives students false confidence until they try it themselves. The wand movement seems simple enough, swish and flick, but coordinating that motion with the precise pronunciation, well, that's where things get interesting. Half the class ends up shouting Wingardium Leviosa, like they're trying to wake the dead. The other half whispers it so quietly their feathers don't even twitch. Flitwick bounces between desks, correcting pronunciation and demonstrating wand technique over and over. His patience never seems to wear thin, even when Seamus Finnegan accidentally sets his feather on fire for the third time. Group work becomes essential during these practical lessons. Students naturally pair up, partly for support and partly because watching someone else struggle makes your own failures feel less embarrassing. Hermione Granger usually masters spells within minutes, which either inspires classmates or makes them want to hide under their desks. Ron Weasley, meanwhile, provides comic relief by making his feather shoot across the room like a tiny rocket. But here's what makes charms special. It's practical magic for everyday life. Flitwick explains how the levitation charm helps with everything from moving heavy furniture to retrieving books from high shelves. Adult wizards use variations of this spell constantly. Mrs. Weasley levitates dishes while cooking dinner. Shop owners float heavy deliveries to upper floors. Even Quidditch players use subtle levitation charms to improve their broom control, though officially that's against the rules. The classroom atmosphere stays light and encouraging throughout the lesson. When students successfully levitate their feathers, Flitwick claps his hands with genuine delight. When they fail, he offers gentle corrections instead of criticism. This supportive environment helps nervous first years build confidence in their magical abilities, which they'll desperately need for more challenging classes later. Small practical exercises form the backbone of every charms lesson. Start with feathers, then move to matchsticks, then pencils, then books. Each object requires slightly different magical strength and control. By the end of first year, students can levitate multiple items simultaneously, though accidents still happen regularly. The hospital wing treats several fell-off-a-floating chair injuries each term. Daily routine in charms follows a predictable pattern that students find comforting. Flitwick reviews the previous lesson briefly, demonstrates new techniques, lets students practice individually, then encourages group collaboration for difficult spells. This structure helps first years adapt to Hogwarts academic expectations while building fundamental magical skills. The real magic happens when students finally achieve their first successful charm, that moment when the feather rises smoothly into the air, responding to your will and your wand. It's unforgettable. Some students laugh with relief, others stare in wonder. A few get so excited they lose concentration and drop their feathers immediately. What's fascinating is how different students approach the same spell. Some rely on precise wand movements, others focus intensely on pronunciation. A few seem to succeed through pure determination and magical instinct. Flitwick celebrates every approach that works, understanding that magical learning isn't one size fits all. As first period winds down, students pack their books with a mixture of satisfaction and anticipation. They've survived their first real magic class, and most managed at least one successful levitation. But now comes the 15-minute break between classes, and those moving staircases aren't going to navigate themselves. The charms lesson wraps up with half the class successfully levitating feathers, and the other half looking like they're trying to conduct an invisible orchestra. Professor Flitwick dismisses everyone with a cheerful wave, and suddenly you're faced with something that might seem insignificant but actually shapes your entire Hogwarts experience: the 15-minute break between classes. Here's what most people don't realize about these short breaks. They're not just bathroom runs or quick water breaks. These moments become the social glue of Hogwarts life. Students pour out of classrooms like water through a dam, flooding the corridors with chatter, laughter, and the occasional panic about forgotten homework. The courtyards fill up first. Why? Fresh air after being cooped up in a classroom feels amazing, especially when that classroom smells like chalk dust and whatever potion ingredients Professor Snape was brewing 3 floors down. Students sprawl across stone benches, trading chocolate frog cards like they're precious commodities, and honestly some of them are. Getting a holographic Dumbledore card is like winning the lottery. But here's where it gets interesting. These aren't just random card swaps. There's an entire underground economy happening. Third years who've collected duplicates become unofficial dealers. First years learn quickly which cards are common, and which ones make other students' eyes light up with envy. The weird part is how seriously everyone takes it. You'll see students examining cards with the intensity of art appraisers. Then there are the library sprinters. These are the students who suddenly remember they have absolutely no idea what Professor McGonagall was talking about in Transfiguration yesterday. They bolt toward the library like their lives depend on it, hoping to cram 15 minutes of reading into their brains before the next class starts. Madam Pince has gotten used to students bursting through the library doors looking slightly desperate. Let's not forget the stair climbers. Hogwarts has moving staircases, which sounds magical until you're trying to get from the dungeons to the 4th floor in 15 minutes. Groups of friends navigate these shifting pathways together, sometimes getting temporarily stranded when a staircase decides to take a detour. You learn to leave extra time for stair-related delays. The portraits add their own flavor to break time. Some of them actually enjoy giving directions to lost students, especially the ones who look properly frazzled. But others? They're basically magical trolls who send you in completely wrong directions just for entertainment. Sir Cadogan is notorious for this. He'll enthusiastically point you toward what he claims is a shortcut, and you'll end up in a broom closet. What's fascinating is how these breaks create micro-communities. The same groups tend to gravitate toward the same spots every day. The Quidditch enthusiasts cluster near windows overlooking the pitch. The bookworms hover near the library entrance. The gossips find corners where they can whisper about who's dating whom and which professor looked particularly grumpy during breakfast. Food becomes surprisingly important during these breaks. Students share leftover treats from care packages, and those magic sweets from the Hogwarts Express trolley make regular appearances. There's something about splitting a cauldron cake with friends that makes the whole castle feel more like home. House mixing happens more during breaks than you might expect. Sure, students sit with their houses during meals, but these informal moments see Gryffindors helping Hufflepuffs find classrooms and Ravenclaws explaining difficult concepts to struggling Slytherins. The house rivalry exists, but it's not as rigid as outsiders might think. Some students use break time for what you might call social maintenance. Quick conversations to clear up misunderstandings from earlier classes. Apologies for borrowed quills that never got returned. Plans for study groups or weekend adventures to Hogsmeade. These little interactions prevent small problems from becoming big ones. The time pressure adds its own energy. 15 minutes feels simultaneously too long and not nearly long enough. Long enough to get properly settled into a conversation, but short enough that you're always watching for signs that other students are starting to drift toward their next classes. Nobody wants to be the last one rushing through corridors when the bell chimes. Weather affects break dynamics more than you'd think. Rainy days pack everyone into the indoor corridors and common areas, creating a cozy but slightly chaotic atmosphere. Sunny days pull everyone outside, spreading the energy across courtyards and covered walkways. Snow days, those create their own magic, with spontaneous snowball fights and students trying to catch snowflakes on their tongues. The approaching bell creates its own ritual. Conversations get wrapped up hastily, card trades get finalized quickly, books get shoved back into bags with less care than they probably deserve. There's a collective energy shift as hundreds of students prepare to move toward their next adventure. These breaks teach you something important about Hogwarts life. The magic isn't just in the classes or the grand feasts. Sometimes it's in these small moments of connection, laughter and shared experience between the structured parts of your day. Speaking of structure, those 15 minutes of freedom are about to give way to something completely different. Time to head toward the greenhouses, where Professor Sprout is waiting with plants that bite back, right after mastering the art of making feathers float or watching them crash spectacularly to the floor. Students grab their bags and head toward the greenhouses. The 15-minute break between classes barely gives you enough time to shake the charm-induced tingles from your fingertips before Professor Sprout expects you to handle plants that might actually fight back. Walking toward herbology means leaving the castle's warm stone corridors behind. Fresh Scottish air hits your face as you cross the courtyard, and you can smell something earthy and mysterious drifting from the glass structures ahead. These aren't your grandmother's garden sheds. The Hogwarts greenhouses stretch in a neat row, each one more advanced and dangerous than the last. Greenhouse 1 looks innocent enough through its foggy windows. That's where first years start their magical plant education. But glimpse Greenhouse 3 in the distance, and you'll notice the thick, reinforced glass and warning signs. Students don't venture there until they're older, wiser, and significantly better at dodging aggressive vegetation. Professor Sprout herself embodies everything you'd expect from someone who spends her days with dirt under her fingernails. Her patched robes carry permanent stains from decades of plant encounters. Dragon dung fertilizer leaves its mark, literally. She greets new students with genuine warmth, though her calloused hands suggest she's wrestled plenty of venomous tentaculars in her time. The greenhouse door swings open, releasing a wave of humid plant-scented air. It's like stepping into a living pharmacy mixed with a jungle. Rows of wooden tables stretch across the space, each equipped with small pots, trowels, and protective gloves that have seen better days. Above your head, strange flowers hang in suspended planters, occasionally dripping mysterious substances onto unsuspecting students below. Then there's the smell. Earth, yes, but also something medicinal and slightly sulfurous. Some plants here don't just grow, they actively participate in the magical world. The bouncing bulbs literally bounce when touched. Devil's Snare tries to strangle anything that gets too close. And those innocent-looking mandrakes? Their cries can knock you unconscious if you're not wearing proper ear protection. Speaking of mandrakes, Professor Sprout demonstrates proper handling techniques with the enthusiasm of someone genuinely excited about potentially lethal plants. Never, and I mean never, pull a mature mandrake from its pot without earmuffs, she warns, holding up a pair of fluffy pink ear protectors that look ridiculous but could save your life. The baby mandrakes are manageable. their cries might just make you dizzy. But adult mandrakes pack enough sonic punch to kill. Students quickly learn that herbology isn't just about memorizing plant names. You're getting your hands dirty, literally and figuratively. Repotting mandrakes means wrestling with roots that look disturbingly human-like. The plants squirm and protest as you transfer them to larger containers, their leafy tops waving frantically above soil level. Protective equipment becomes your best friend. Dragon hide gloves protect against thorns, stings and bites. Yes, some plants bite. The fanged geraniums aren't called that for decoration. They've developed actual teeth over centuries of magical breeding, and they're not shy about using them on careless fingers. But here's the fascinating part. These aren't just dangerous curiosities. Every plant serves a purpose in the wizarding world. Mandrakes restore people who've been petrified. Dittany heals wounds instantly. Even the aggressive devil's snare has uses if you know how to harvest it safely. Professor Sprout teaches you to see beyond the dangers to the incredible benefits hidden in each species. Class time flies by when you're trying to keep venomous tentaculars from escaping their pots. These plants seem determined to explore the greenhouse, wrapping their vine-like appendages around anything within reach. Students work in pairs, one handling the plant while the other keeps watch for wayward tentacles trying to grab unsuspecting ankles. The greenhouse's magical environment means plants grow faster and stranger than anything in the Muggle world. Pumpkins swell to enormous sizes overnight. Flowers change colors based on their mood. Some plants actually communicate with each other through underground root networks, warning their neighbors about approaching students with pruning shears. By the end of class, everyone's robes bear evidence of their plant encounters. Soil stains, mysterious green smudges, and the occasional thorn stuck to sleeves. Professor Sprout inspects each student's work with the keen eye of someone who can tell whether you've properly aerated the soil just by looking at your dirty fingernails. As you pack up your tools and remove those ridiculous but necessary earmuffs, your stomach starts rumbling. The greenhouse's humid air and physical work have built up quite an appetite. Fortunately, lunch awaits back in the Great Hall, where the most dangerous thing on your plate won't try to bite back. Well, usually. By noon, stomachs are growling louder than a first-year's attempt at pronouncing Wingardium Leviosa. The Great Hall transforms once again into the heart of Hogwarts life, as lunch service begins promptly at 12 o'clock. But here's what most people don't realize about Hogwarts lunch. It's not just about refueling for afternoon classes. It's a social battlefield where house politics play out over pumpkin pasties. The lunch menu reads like something from a medieval feast crossed with your grandmother's comfort food collection. Steak and kidney pie sits alongside shepherd's pie, both steaming hot despite appearing instantly on the tables. The house elves somehow manage to keep everything at the perfect temperature, which makes you wonder if they've mastered magic that even the professors envy. Roasted vegetables glisten with butter, while fresh bread rolls practically beg to be torn apart and slathered with jam. Well, here's where things get interesting. The seating dynamics shift completely during lunch compared to breakfast. Morning meals see students grouped by their immediate friend circles, but lunch, that's when the real social mapping happens. Older students hold court at the ends of their house tables, dispensing advice about upcoming afternoon classes. Third years huddle together, whispering about their first Hogsmeade weekend permissions. First years still stick close to anyone who seems remotely friendly. The Gryffindor table buzzes with animated discussions about Quidditch strategies and who's planning to try out for the team. Makes sense, right? They're the house known for their boldness, so naturally they're plotting their next adventure between bites of Yorkshire pudding. Meanwhile, Ravenclaw students often have books propped against their water goblets, somehow managing to read while eating, a skill that impresses and baffles everyone else. Then there's the Hufflepuff table, where sharing food becomes an art form. They're the only house where you'll regularly see students offering bites of their favorite dishes to table mates. Their lunch conversations tend to focus on upcoming herbology assignments, or which magical creatures they're hoping to encounter in Care of Magical Creatures class. The warmth radiating from their section has nothing to do with the enchanted ceiling. Slytherin students approach lunch with the same strategic thinking they apply to everything else. They discuss which professors might be easiest to impress, analyze the weaknesses they've noticed in other houses' Quidditch teams, and occasionally engage in what could generously be called spirited debate about magical theory. Their section of the Great Hall often sounds like a miniature version of the Ministry of Magic during a heated parliamentary session, but the real entertainment comes from above. The ghosts make their regular appearances during lunch, and nearly headless Nick has a particular fondness for gliding through the middle of heated student discussions. His timing is impeccable. He always seems to materialize just when someone's making a particularly important point about their transfiguration homework. The Fat Friar often hovers near the Hufflepuff table, offering encouragement to struggling students, while the Grey Lady maintains her mysterious presence near the Ravenclaw section. The lunch hour reveals something fascinating about Hogwarts' social hierarchy that Morning Rush doesn't capture. Prefects use this time to actually connect with younger students rather than just enforcing rules. Fifth-year prefects often slide down to sit with nervous second years, offering tips about which teachers appreciate extra effort and which ones prefer students to stick strictly to assignment requirements. These conversations can make or break a student's entire academic experience. And the weird part is how mail delivery works differently during lunch compared to breakfast. Morning Owl Post brings family letters and newspaper subscriptions, but lunch deliveries often carry packages from home filled with homemade treats and forgotten textbooks. The timing creates a secondary wave of social interaction as students share sweets from their families' kitchens or frantically borrow notes from friends whose packages included the books they left at home. Food preferences during lunch also reveal cultural backgrounds that the sorting hat ceremony couldn't capture. Students from magical families often gravitate toward traditional wizarding dishes, while those from Muggle backgrounds sometimes stare uncertainly at items like black pudding or haggis before tentatively taking small portions. The beauty lies in watching mixed heritage students bridge these gaps, explaining unfamiliar foods to their table mates while discovering new favorites themselves. The professors maintain a lighter presence during lunch compared to breakfast supervision. They understand that midday meals serve as crucial social bonding time for students who spend most of their day in structured classroom environments. Occasional glances from the head table ensure no food fights break out, but mostly the staff allows natural student dynamics to flourish. As 1 o'clock approaches and lunch service winds down, conversations shift toward afternoon expectations. Students begin mentally preparing for their next challenges, whether that means gathering courage for a particularly intimidating professor or excitement for a favorite subject. The energy in the Great Hall builds towards something entirely different. The anticipation that comes with knowing your most challenging class of the day might be waiting just around the corner. The Great Hall buzzes with post-lunch chatter, but that energy quickly dies when students realize what comes next. Potions class. Down in the dungeons, with Professor Snape, the trek to the dungeons feels like descending into another world entirely. Stone steps worn smooth by centuries of nervous students lead deeper underground. The temperature drops with each level. Torches flicker in iron brackets, casting dancing shadows that make even the bravest Gryffindors walk a little faster. Professor Severus Snape has taught potions for years, and his reputation precedes him like a dark cloud. Black robes billowing behind him, greasy hair framing a pale face, and eyes that seem to see right through any excuse you might have prepared. He speaks in a low, silky voice that somehow carries more menace than shouting ever could. The potions classroom itself feels designed to intimidate. Cold stone walls weep with moisture. Glass jars line every available shelf, filled with things that float, bubble, or stare back at you. Pickled rats' brains sit next to dried beetles. Snake fangs rest in neat rows beside what might be unicorn hair, though it's probably something far less pleasant. Students file in and take their seats at long wooden tables scarred by years of cauldron accidents. Each table has built-in burners for heating, though the flames always seem dimmer than they should be. The air smells of herbs, sulfur, and something vaguely medicinal that catches in your throat. Snape begins each lesson the same way. Silence. He lets his gaze sweep across the room, noting every untucked shirt, every ink stain, every sign of imperfection. Then he starts talking about potions like they're the most important thing in the wizarding world, which, to be fair, they might be. Brewing potions requires precision that makes charms look simple. Add ingredients in the wrong order, your cauldron might explode. Stir counterclockwise instead of clockwise. The mixture turns purple and starts smoking. Miss the timing by 30 seconds. You've just created something that smells like rotten eggs, and probably violates several magical safety codes. First years typically start with basic healing drafts and simple antidotes. These might sound boring, but when your stirring technique is off and green fumes start rising from your cauldron, boring suddenly becomes terrifying. The fumes can do interesting things. Turn your hair bright orange for a week, make your voice sound like a squeaky toy, give you temporary spots that glow in the dark. Snape prowls between the tables like a hunting cat. He appears behind students without warning, making them jump and usually mess up whatever they were carefully measuring. His criticisms are swift and cutting. Longbottom, that's not a sleeping draught, that's liquid disaster. Miss Brown, perhaps you confused this with cooking class. We don't season potions with enthusiasm. The worst part, he's usually right. Potions demand respect for every ingredient, every measurement, every moment of brewing time. A pinch too much powdered moonstone, and your wit-sharpening potion becomes a confusion concoction. Forget to add hellebore essence at exactly the right temperature, and your draught of peace turns into liquid anxiety. Advanced students work with ingredients that sound like they belong in horror stories. Bezoars from goat stomachs that can neutralize most poisons. Lacewing flies that must be stewed for 21 days. Human hair for polyjuice potion, though that particular brew takes a month to complete and requires skills far beyond what most students possess. The dungeon atmosphere adds another layer of challenge. Your hands shake from cold, making precise measurements nearly impossible. Condensation drips from the ceiling into carefully prepared mixtures. The flickering torchlight makes it hard to judge color changes that determine whether your potion is working or about to explode. But here's the thing about potions that Snape never mentions directly. When you finally get it right, when your cauldron contains exactly what the recipe promised, there's magic in that moment that feels different from waving a wand. You've created something new through patience, skill, and careful attention to detail. Students leave each potions class exhausted, slightly singed and often sporting unusual side effects from wayward fumes. Some discover they actually enjoy the challenge despite Snape's intimidating presence. Others count the minutes until they can escape back to the upper floors where the air doesn't smell like pickled slugs and burnt beetle eyes. The dungeon classroom empties quickly when class ends, students eager to wash the smell of strange ingredients from their robes and check that their eyebrows are still the right color. But tomorrow they'll be back, cauldrons ready, hoping today's lesson won't result in anything that glows, explodes, or follows them back to the dormitory. Speaking of following students around the castle, wait until you hear about what happens when lessons move outside to meet creatures that are very much alive. After brewing questionable potions in the dungeons, students need fresh air. Care of magical creatures provides exactly that, though fresh becomes relative when you're dealing with creatures that might consider you lunch. The class takes place outside the castle grounds, where the Scottish breeze carries scents of the forbidden forest and adventure. Professor Hagrid usually teaches this subject, standing nearly twice as tall as his students. His enthusiasm for dangerous creatures matches his size. While other teachers might start with theory, Hagrid believes hands-on learning works best. This approach thrills some students and terrifies others, sometimes simultaneously. The gamekeeper's hut sits near the edge of the forbidden forest, surrounded by pumpkin patches that grow to impossible sizes. Students gather in a semicircle on the grass, their black robes flapping in the wind. The outdoor classroom changes with each lesson, depending on which creature needs attention that day. Hippogriffs rank among the most impressive creatures students encounter. These magnificent beasts have eagle heads and wings attached to horse bodies. Their feathers shimmer in sunlight, ranging from stormy grey to rich chestnut brown. But here's the crucial part that keeps students safe. Hippogriffs will only bow to respectful students. Approach with arrogance, and you'll face razor-sharp talons. The proper greeting involves maintaining eye contact while bowing deeply. Never break eye contact first. The hippogriff decides whether you're worthy of its respect. If it bows back, you can approach carefully. If not, back away slowly and count yourself lucky to keep all your limbs attached. Then there are flobberworms, which sound intimidating but couldn't harm a butterfly. These brown, slimy creatures do absolutely nothing except eat lettuce and grow longer. Students often joke that watching flobberworms provides excellent practice for staying awake during history of magic. The creatures serve as confidence builders for nervous students who need to succeed with something before tackling more dangerous animals. Nifflers create chaos wherever they appear. These black, furry creatures resemble oversized moles with pouches like kangaroos. Their obsession with shiny objects makes them natural thieves. Students must remove all jewelry, coins, and metal objects before Niffler lessons. Otherwise, these mischievous creatures will steal everything sparkly and hide it in their pouches. One memorable lesson involved a Niffler escaping with a student's grandmother's wedding ring. The entire class spent 2 hours chasing the creature around the grounds while it chittered happily, treating the pursuit like an elaborate game. The ring was eventually recovered, slightly slobbered on but intact. Bowtruckles live in wand-quality trees, particularly Wigan tree. These stick-like creatures guard their homes fiercely, though they're only 8 inches tall. Their twig fingers can pick locks and their wooden bodies blend perfectly with tree bark. Offering woodlice as treats usually calms aggressive bowtruckles. though finding enough woodlice for an entire class requires advanced planning. Safety instructions change with each creature, but certain rules remain constant. Never run from a predator unless specifically told to do so. Most magical creatures interpret running as either prey behavior or a challenge. Keep your wand ready, but don't brandish it threateningly. Many creatures recognize wands as weapons and react accordingly. Weather affects lessons dramatically. Rain makes some creatures irritable while energizing others. Snow brings out the playful side in young dragons, though Hogwarts rarely keeps anything that dangerous for student lessons. Strong winds make flying creatures unpredictable and harder to control. The gamekeeper's assistant sometimes helps with lessons, especially when dealing with multiple creatures simultaneously. Students learn that magical creature care requires patience, respect, and quick reflexes in equal measure. Each species has unique dietary needs, behavioral patterns, and danger levels that must be memorized. Feeding time becomes educational theater. Blast-ended scroots eat everything and produce explosive results from both ends. Their armor-like shells protect them from their own explosions, but students must maintain safe distances. These hybrid creatures grow rapidly and become increasingly dangerous as they mature. Care of magical creatures teaches practical skills beyond animal handling. Students learn to read body language, assess threat levels quickly, and remain calm under pressure. These abilities prove useful in other subjects and life situations far from Hogwarts grounds. The class attracts students who dream of working with dragons in Romania or studying unicorns in forbidden forests. Others take it simply because outdoor lessons beat sitting in stuffy classrooms. Either way, everyone leaves with healthy respect for the magical world's diverse inhabitants. Homework assignments often involve researching creature habitats, dietary requirements, or breeding patterns. Students write essays about proper handling techniques, or create care schedules for different species. The work requires both book learning and practical observation skills. Some creatures visit only briefly, brought in for specific lessons before returning to their natural habitats. Others live permanently on the grounds, becoming familiar faces that students check on between classes. This ongoing relationship teaches responsibility and long-term animal care. But even the most exciting outdoor lessons eventually end, and students must return indoors for their next subject. The contrast feels jarring after breathing fresh air and handling living creatures, especially when heading toward the competitive atmosphere that awaits them next. The moment most Hogwarts students dream about isn't getting their Hogwarts letter or being sorted into their house. It's flying, and there's only one official way to do that at school: Quidditch. Every September, after students have settled into their routines and gotten comfortable with their wands, the 4 house teams post their tryout notices. These aren't just casual announcements stuck on common room bulletin boards. We're talking about magical parchments that shimmer with house colors and sometimes even move around the board to catch your attention. Gryffindor's notice might roar softly when touched. Slytherin's could hiss. The competition starts before you even show up to tryouts. But here's what makes Quidditch tryouts different from any Muggle sport. You're not just testing athletic ability, you're testing courage. Think about it. You're flying 30 feet in the air on a wooden stick, chasing balls that are actively trying to knock you off said stick. The bludgers aren't nicknamed the aggressive ones for nothing. They're literally enchanted to hunt down players and send them crashing to the ground. Each house team needs 7 players, and the positions are wildly different from anything you'd see in regular sports. 3 chasers handle the quaffle, trying to score through the opponent's goal hoops. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. While they're attempting to score, 2 beaters are swinging wooden bats, redirecting those murderous bludgers toward the other team. Meanwhile, the keeper guards 3 goal hoops that are massive compared to most sports, but when players are zooming around at high speeds, those hoops suddenly feel tiny. Then there's the seeker position. This is where things get really weird. While everyone else is focused on the main game, the seeker ignores almost everything to hunt for a tiny golden ball with wings. The golden snitch is about the size of a walnut, flies faster than any broomstick, and has a memory. It remembers every hand that's tried to catch it. Some matches last 5 minutes because the seeker catches it quickly. Others go on for days because the snitch decides to be difficult. Tryouts typically happen on weekday afternoons when the Quidditch pitch is free from regular practice sessions. The pitch itself is enormous, longer than a football field and twice as wide. Goal hoops tower 50 feet high at each end, and the grass is kept magically perfect regardless of weather. Rain, snow, or shine. That field looks like it belongs in a painting. Nervous students show up with their own broomsticks if they have them, though the school keeps a collection of older models for those who need them. These school brooms are, well, let's just say they have character. Some pull slightly to the left, others take a few extra seconds to respond to commands. One particularly ancient clean sweep allegedly requires you to kick it twice before it starts properly. The tryout process varies by house and captain preference, but most follow a similar pattern. First comes basic flying, loops, dives, sharp turns, sudden stops. Captains watch for natural ability, and more importantly, how well you keep your head when things get chaotic. Next comes position-specific trials. Chaser wannabes practice throwing and catching the quaffle while dodging mock bludgers. Keeper hopefuls face rapid-fire shots from multiple directions. Beta candidates swing bats at training bludgers that have been slowed down but still pack a punch. Seeker tryouts are the most unpredictable. Some captains release practice snitches, slower, larger versions of the real thing. Others test reflexes and eyesight with games that have nothing to do with flying. One Ravenclaw captain famously made Seeker candidates solve riddles while hovering upside down, claiming that mental agility under pressure was more valuable than raw speed. What's fascinating is how house personality shows up in their team strategies. Gryffindor tends toward bold, sometimes reckless plays that either result in spectacular victories or spectacular crashes. Slytherin focuses on cunning tactics and exploiting rule loopholes. They're notorious for moves that are technically legal but definitely questionable. Hufflepuff builds teams based on loyalty and teamwork, creating incredibly coordinated group plays. Ravenclaw approaches the game like a chess match, with complex strategies that sometimes work brilliantly and sometimes overthink themselves into failure. The statistics are pretty telling about student involvement. Over 40% of Hogwarts students either play on their house team, play recreationally, or attend every single match as devoted fans. That's higher participation than most schools see in any activity, magical or otherwise. Practice schedules get posted after teams are selected, and they're intense. Most houses practice 3 times per week, with additional sessions before important matches. Early morning practices are common because the pitch gets crowded, and nobody wants to practice Quidditch moves while dodging other teams. But even with all the structured team practices and official matches, students find ways to bend the rules. Informal pickup games happen regularly, and that's where some of the real magic occurs, both literal and figurative. After all that excitement on the Quidditch pitch, students need somewhere to catch their breath and actually focus on their studies. That's where Hogwarts Library comes in, and trust me, it's nothing like your regular school library back home. First thing you notice, the sheer size of this place. We're talking about thousands upon thousands of magical books stretching up to the ceiling across multiple floors. Some books literally glow on the shelves, others make weird humming sounds when you walk past them. A few actually try to bite your fingers if you're not careful pulling them out. The library opens early in the morning and stays open until late evening, which makes sense when you consider how much homework these students get hit with daily. Each professor seems to think their subject is the only one that matters. Potions essays, charms practice logs, herbology diagrams, it never stops coming. But here's where things get interesting. See that roped off section in the back corner? That's the restricted section, and you can't just waltz in there whenever you feel like it. Oh! You need a signed note from a teacher, and most professors don't hand those out easily. The books in there contain seriously dangerous magic, the kind of spells that could turn your hair purple permanently or worse. Students quickly learn that getting past the rope isn't the real challenge anyway. The books themselves don't want to be read by just anyone. They'll scream when you open them, or the words will rearrange themselves into insults about your intelligence. Some particularly nasty volumes have been known to give readers nightmares for weeks. Then there's Madame Pince, the librarian who runs this whole operation. She enforces silence like her life depends on it. Drop a quill, she'll appear out of nowhere with a glare that could freeze fire. Whisper too loudly to your friend about where to find information on transfiguration theory. You're out faster than you can say sorry. The woman has supernatural hearing, I swear. Students have tested this theory by whispering from opposite ends of the library, and somehow she always knows exactly who's breaking her sacred silence rule. Makes you wonder if she's got some kind of magical enhancement going on with those ears. What really makes the library special during free periods is how different houses mix together naturally. When you're all struggling with the same impossible defense against the dark arts assignment, house rivalry takes a backseat to survival. Gryffindors help Slytherins find books on protective charms. Ravenclaws share research techniques with Hufflepuffs who are falling behind. The big oak tables become unofficial study group headquarters. You'll see third years huddled together trying to figure out why their shrinking solution keeps exploding instead of shrinking things. Fifth years stress about their upcoming OWLS exams, surrounded by towers of books that look ready to topple over any second. Students develop weird habits in here too. Some claim certain seats are luckier than others for exam preparation. Others insist that books reveal their secrets better when approached from the left side of the shelf rather than the right. Superstitious? Maybe. But when you're dealing with magical textbooks, sometimes the strangest approaches actually work. The really dedicated students know which sections stay warmest during winter months. Hint, it's near the charms reference area, where the books naturally generate a cozy glow. Smart thinking when you're spending hours researching the proper wand movements for levitation spells while snow piles up outside the windows. Free periods in the library also become prime time for passing notes between friends. Carefully, of course, since Madam Pince has eyes like a hawk. Students master the art of silent communication through elaborate hand gestures and meaningful looks across reading tables. Amazing how creative you get when talking. Could get you banned from the one place you desperately need to pass your classes. Some books require special handling techniques that aren't taught in any class. Ancient runes texts sometimes need to be read backwards. Certain potions reference materials will only open if you hum a specific tune first. Defense against the dark arts books occasionally test whether you're worthy by asking riddles before revealing their contents. The library transforms completely during exam periods. What's usually a place of quiet study becomes an absolute pressure cooker of teenage anxiety and magical mishaps. Stress makes some students' magic go haywire, causing their notes to catch fire or their quills to write backwards. But here's something most people don't realize about library-free periods. They're where lifelong friendships often begin. Nothing bonds people quite like frantically searching for information about bowtruckle mating habits at 10 minutes before curfew, because everyone forgot about their Care of Magical Creatures essay. Speaking of curfew, students who push their library time too close to lights out often discover something fascinating waiting for them in those dimly lit castle corridors. Climbing the winding stairs to Professor Trelawney's North Tower classroom feels like ascending into another world entirely. The narrow stone steps spiral upward, making your legs ache by the time you reach the circular trapdoor at the top. But here's where things get interesting. The moment you push through that entrance, you're hit with a wall of perfumed air so thick you could practically swim through it. The classroom itself defies every expectation of what a normal lesson space should look like. Forget neat rows of desks and proper lighting. This place resembles your eccentric aunt's attic crossed with a fortune teller's tent from a traveling carnival. Heavy curtains block most of the natural light, leaving the room bathed in a dim reddish glow from silk-covered lamps scattered around every surface. The scent of burning incense hangs so heavily in the air that some students start coughing within minutes. Professor Trelawney herself appears to be part of the mystical decoration. Her enormous glasses magnify her eyes to an almost comical size, while countless bangles and beads jangle with every dramatic gesture she makes. And trust me, every gesture is dramatic. She speaks in hushed, breathy tones about the inner eye and seeing beyond the veil, making even simple instructions sound like ancient prophecies. Tea leaf reading becomes the first major challenge most students face in divination. You drink your tea, swirl the dregs 3 times counterclockwise, then peer into your cup hoping to spot meaningful shapes in the leftover leaves. The problem, those soggy tea leaves could look like absolutely anything your imagination conjures up. One student sees a grim omen of death in what clearly resembles a slightly wonky bicycle. Another interprets obvious toast crumbs as signs of great fortune ahead. Then there's crystal ball gazing, which sounds mystical until you realize you're basically staring into a glorified glass sphere, hoping something magical happens. Most students see nothing but their own reflection staring back, occasionally distorted by the curve of the crystal. Professor Trelawney insists that meaningful visions will come to those with true sight, but after 20 minutes of intense staring, your eyes water so much that everything starts looking mystical. Dream journals become another quirky aspect of divination homework. Students must record their dreams each morning, then attempt to interpret the symbolic meanings hidden within. But here's the weird part. Most teenage dreams involve completely ordinary things like missing breakfast or forgetting homework, hardly the stuff of prophetic visions. Still, Professor Trelawney manages to find deep significance in even the most mundane dream about losing your favorite quill. Palmistry lessons bring their own complications. Reading the lines on someone's palm sounds straightforward until you realize everyone's hands look completely different. The heartline, headline, and lifeline supposedly reveal your entire future, but half the class can't even locate these mysterious lines properly. Students end up making wild predictions based on barely visible creases, leading to some rather entertaining fortune-telling sessions. The tower windows provide the one genuinely impressive aspect of the divination classroom. Looking out across the grounds, you get spectacular views of the Forbidden Forest stretching into the distance. During evening classes, when the setting sun casts long shadows between the trees, even the most skeptical students feel a slight shiver of mystery. Maybe it's the atmosphere, or maybe those incense fumes are finally getting to everyone. Many Hogwarts students treat divination as either the most fascinating subject or complete nonsense, with very little middle ground. Some genuinely believe they're developing mystical abilities, carefully practicing their crystal ball techniques and memorizing dream interpretation guides. Others approach each lesson like an elaborate game of make-believe, inventing dramatic predictions just to see Professor Trelawney's delighted reactions. The grading system in divination remains wonderfully mysterious. Unlike potions, where your cauldron either explodes or produces the correct color, divination assignments get evaluated on creativity, intuition, and something Professor Trelawney calls spiritual awareness. This means students who craft the most imaginative interpretations often receive the highest marks, regardless of whether their predictions actually make sense. Regular homework involves practicing various forms of fortune-telling on family members during holidays, leading to some interesting owl post from confused parents. Apparently telling your mother that her tea leaves predict she'll meet a tall, dark stranger doesn't go over well when she's been happily married for 20 years. What makes divination genuinely unique among Hogwarts subjects is how it celebrates uncertainty rather than concrete knowledge. While other classes demand precise wand movements or exact potion ingredients, divination encourages students to trust their instincts and embrace ambiguity. But even the most dedicated crystal ball gazers eventually need practical magical skills, which is exactly why the next subject on every student's schedule takes such a different approach to magical education. Defense against the dark arts stands as arguably the most controversial class at Hogwarts, not because of what it teaches, but because of who teaches it. Every single professor who has taken this position has lasted exactly one school year, no exceptions. This isn't coincidence or bad luck, it's a legitimate curse placed on the position itself. The statistics are genuinely alarming when you break them down. Since Tom Riddle applied for the job and got rejected by Dumbledore decades ago, every defense teacher has met some unfortunate fate. One got his memory wiped, another turned out to be a Death Eater in disguise, a third got his soul sucked out by a Dementor's kiss. The pattern holds so consistently that betting pools probably exist among the portraits about how each new teacher will exit. But here's what makes this class fascinating. Despite its cursed teaching position, Defense Against the Dark Arts covers the most practical magic students will ever learn. While Transfiguration teaches you to turn a mouse into a teacup, Defense teaches you how to survive when something tries to kill you. The curriculum includes protective spells, counter curses, and recognition of dark magical creatures that most wizards hope they'll never encounter. Students practice the Boggart Banishing spell, which requires them to face their worst fears head-on. The spell itself is simple, ridiculous, but the mental challenge proves enormous. You must force yourself to laugh at whatever terrifies you most. Spiders wearing roller skates. Snape in your grandmother's clothes. The technique works because laughter destroys a Boggart's power, but getting students to laugh when confronting their deepest phobias takes serious courage. Then there's the Patronus charm, which creates a silvery guardian animal from your happiest memories. Advanced students learn this spell to repel Dementors, those soul-sucking creatures that drain all joy and hope from their vicinity. The weird part is that each person's Patronus takes a different animal form based on their personality and experiences. A stag, an otter, a doe, the animal reflects something fundamental about who you are as a person. The classroom itself changes dramatically depending on which doomed teacher currently occupies it. Some professors fill it with cages containing dangerous creatures for hands-on learning. Others prefer theoretical approaches with detailed charts showing various hexes and their effects. The more paranoid teachers, and honestly, given the curse paranoia seems reasonable, install multiple magical security measures and protective enchantments around their workspace. Let's not forget the practical exercises that make this class genuinely exciting. Students learn to cast shield charms that can deflect minor hexes. They practice stunning spells that can knock an attacker unconscious. The disarming charm gets frequent use since it forces opponents to drop their wands, often the difference between life and death in magical combat. These aren't party tricks or academic exercises, they're survival tools. The curriculum also covers recognition and defense against various dark creatures. Vampires, werewolves, inferi. Students learn the warning signs and appropriate countermeasures for each threat. Knowledge that seems academic, until you remember that the wizarding world contains actual monsters that occasionally wander into populated areas. The Forbidden Forest right outside the castle houses creatures that could easily kill unprepared students who venture too far from the safe paths. What's particularly interesting is how different teachers approach the same subject matter. Some focus heavily on offensive spells, believing the best defense involves overwhelming your opponent. Others emphasize protective magic and escape techniques. A few brave souls attempt to teach students about the psychology behind dark magic, why wizards choose evil, how corruption spreads, what makes seemingly normal people embrace terrible power. The most controversial lessons involve learning about unforgivable curses. The Killing Curse, the Torture Curse, and the Imperious Curse represent the darkest magic possible. Students can't practice these spells using any unforgivable curse on a human earns you a life sentence in Azkaban prison. But understanding how they work, recognizing when someone uses them, and knowing potential defenses could save lives in dangerous situations. Advanced students sometimes get exposed to memories of actual dark arts encounters through pensive demonstrations. Watching real wizarding duels, seeing how quickly situations turn deadly, observing the split-second decisions that determine survival, these experiences provide education no textbook could match. The memories often come from auras, professional dark wizard catchers who risk their lives protecting the magical community. The irony of this cursed position becomes clear when you realize how desperately Hogwarts needs consistent, quality defense instruction. Dark magic grows stronger and more sophisticated each year. New threats emerge constantly. Students require the best possible training to face an increasingly dangerous world. But while defense against the dark arts prepares students for external threats, another class takes them to entirely different heights. The Astronomy Tower awaits, where ancient magic meets celestial movements, and where night classes reveal secrets written in the stars themselves. When most students are settling into their pajamas and thinking about homework, astronomy students are just getting started. While other classes happen during normal daylight hours, Professor Sinistra's lessons begin after sunset on top of the Astronomy Tower. The tallest tower at Hogwarts becomes a gateway to the stars every clear night. The trek up to the Astronomy Tower isn't for the faint-hearted. Hundreds of stone steps spiral upward through narrow passages that seem to go on forever. Students arrive slightly out of breath, carrying heavy telescopes and star charts that flutter in the evening breeze. Makes sense why this class builds leg muscles along with magical knowledge, right? Enchanted telescopes line the tower's circular platform, each one gleaming with brass fittings and magical lenses that can spot celestial objects millions of miles away. These aren't ordinary Muggle telescopes, they automatically adjust focus, track moving planets, and even highlight constellation patterns with faint golden lines. Some students swear the telescopes whisper the names of stars when you look through them, though Professor Sinistra never confirms this particular bit of magic. The view from up there takes your breath away. The entire Scottish countryside spreads out below like a dark carpet dotted with tiny village lights. The Black Lake reflects whatever moonlight filters through the clouds, and the Forbidden Forest creates an ominous black border along the horizon. But once students adjust their telescopes and look up, Earth feels very small indeed. Constellation mapping forms the backbone of most astronomy lessons. Each student receives detailed star charts that change throughout the school year as different constellations become visible. Learning to identify Orion might seem straightforward, until you realize wizarding astronomy includes constellations Muggles have never discovered. The Wizard's Hat constellation only appears to magical folk, and its position supposedly predicts the success of new spells. Then there's the practical application that makes astronomy essential rather than just pretty stargazing. Moon phases directly affect potion brewing. Certain ingredients must be harvested during specific lunar cycles, or they lose their magical properties entirely. Werewolf transformations follow lunar patterns too, making moon tracking a matter of safety rather than academic curiosity. Professor Sinistra teaches students to read planetary alignments like a magical calendar. Venus rising with Mars signals optimal times for love potions, though she's quick to remind students that brewing such potions remains against school rules. Jupiter's position affects divination accuracy, while Mercury's movements influence communication spells and owl post-delivery times. The weird part is, how cold it gets up there. Even on relatively warm September evenings, the wind whips across the tower platform with enough force to send star charts flying into the night. Students learn to cast warming charms on their hands before handling telescope equipment, and many bring thick cloaks that wouldn't look out of place in the Arctic. Sharing body warmth becomes a survival strategy disguised as friendship. Some nights bring unexpected celestial visitors that turn routine lessons into memorable adventures. Shooting stars streak across the sky with magical sparkles that linger longer than natural meteors. Occasionally, winged horses from distant magical schools fly past, their riders waving at the students below. Professor Sinistra once pointed out a constellation of dragons, actual dragons flying in formation so high up they looked like moving stars. But why do wizards need to study regular astronomy alongside magical stargazing? Ancient magic draws power from celestial movements that have influenced Earth for billions of years. The most powerful spells require precise timing based on planetary positions, lunar phases, and stellar alignments that change constantly. Students who master astronomical timing often become the most skilled adult wizards. Weather creates the biggest challenge for astronomy classes. Scotland's cloudy climate means clear nights are precious commodities that can't be wasted. When thick clouds roll in during scheduled lessons, students spend time in the tower's lower classroom studying theoretical astronomy and practicing telescope maintenance. These backup lessons prove just as valuable, though significantly warmer. The tower's location offers another unexpected benefit: privacy for important conversations. Teachers rarely patrol the astronomy tower, except during actual classes, making it a favorite spot for students who need to discuss sensitive topics away from eavesdropping portraits and curious ghosts. Many friendships deepen during those quiet moments between star observations. Professor Sinistra maintains detailed records of every student's progress, tracking not just their ability to identify celestial objects but their understanding of magical timing principles. Advanced students learn to create personalized star charts that predict their own magical peak performance periods. This knowledge proves invaluable during important exams or challenging spell practice. As midnight approaches and lessons wind down, students pack their equipment with practiced efficiency despite numb fingers and sleepy eyes. The long descent down spiral staircases feels easier with gravity's help, though tired legs sometimes wobble on the narrow steps. Tomorrow brings different challenges in warm, well-lit classrooms where staying awake won't require quite so much effort. But first, students need to navigate darkened corridors back to their dormitories without getting caught by patrolling prefects, and after a night spent mapping the heavens, earthbound rule-breaking feels almost mundane. The Great Hall transforms completely when dinner arrives. Gone are the scattered breakfast crumbs and lunch remnants. At exactly 6 o'clock, the long wooden tables practically groan under the weight of tonight's magical feast. We're talking roasted chickens that still steam from the ovens, platters of lamb chops seasoned with herbs most students can't even pronounce, and beef so tender it falls apart with just a fork. But here's where Hogwarts gets interesting. The menu changes every single night, and nobody knows what's coming next. Monday might bring shepherd's pie with Yorkshire pudding. Tuesday could surprise everyone with exotic dishes from around the wizarding world. The house elves working in the kitchens below have access to ingredients that would make professional chefs weep with envy. Students file in wearing their house colors, tired from a full day of classes but energized by the promise of good food. The Gryffindor table buzzes with conversation about Quidditch strategies. Ravenclaws debate whether Professor Flitwick's latest charm theory makes practical sense. Meanwhile, Hufflepuffs share their greenhouse adventures, often with dirt still under their fingernails from herbology. Then there's the Slytherin table, where dinner conversations tend toward more strategic topics. They're the ones calculating house point standings while cutting into their roast potatoes. The real magic happens when Dumbledore stands up. His beard catches the light from hundreds of floating candles above, and the entire hall falls silent faster than you'd think possible with nearly 300 teenagers. His announcements range from practical reminders about library curfews to thrilling news about upcoming events. The Forbidden Forest remains, as always, forbidden to all students, he might say with a knowing twinkle. Everyone knows some students will ignore this completely, but the warning gets delivered anyway. Makes sense, right? Well, here's something most people don't realize about these evening announcements. Dumbledore uses them strategically. Bad news gets sandwiched between lighter topics. Serious rule changes get introduced alongside jokes about missing socks in the laundry. The man understands crowd psychology better than most politicians. House points get awarded during dinner too, and watching the reaction is pure entertainment. When a professor stands up and says, 10 points to Hufflepuff for excellent teamwork in defense against the dark arts, You can literally see confidence ripple down their table. Students sit straighter, smile wider, and suddenly their shepherd's pie tastes even better. But losing points? That's a different story entirely. The silence that follows 15 points from Gryffindor could cut glass. Forks pause halfway to mouths. Conversations stop mid-sentence. The guilty students usually try to disappear into their seats while their housemates shoot varying degrees of disappointed looks their way. The house point hourglasses stand at the front of the hall, impossible to ignore. Those colored gems shift throughout dinner as professors make their announcements. Students develop an almost obsessive habit of glancing toward them between bites. The competition never sleeps at Hogwarts. Let's not forget the social dynamics happening at these tables. Dinner is when friendships really develop. Shared meals create bonds that last decades. Students trade stories about their families, their fears about upcoming exams, and their theories about which teacher might secretly be part vampire. These conversations matter more than most classes. The food keeps appearing in waves throughout the meal. Just when you think the main course is finished, dessert materializes. Treacle tart, chocolate eclairs, ice cream in flavors that definitely don't exist in the Muggle world. Some students develop legendary reputations for their dessert consumption. Every house has that one person who can finish 3 helpings of trifle without breaking a sweat. And the weird part is how the plates clean themselves. Students finish eating, push their plates forward slightly, and within seconds everything disappears. No washing, no scraping, no stacking. The magic handles it all invisibly, leaving the tables spotless for tomorrow's breakfast. Teachers eat at the high table, but they're not distant authority figures during dinner. Professor McGonagall has been spotted smiling at student jokes. Professor Sprout often walks between tables, checking on students who struggled in herbology that day. Even Snape, intimidating as he is, uses dinner time to observe his students in their natural habitat. By 8 o'clock, stomachs are full and spirits are high. Students begin the slow migration back to their common rooms, but they're not rushing. Dinner conversations spill out into the corridors, continuing as groups climb staircases and navigate moving portraits. The evening ahead promises warmth, friendship, and maybe some studying if absolutely necessary. Common room fires are waiting, chess games need finishing, and someone definitely brought sweets from home to share. But first everyone needs to digest this magnificent feast properly. After a long day of spells, potions, and magical creatures that might bite your fingers off, there's nothing quite like sinking into the warmth of your house common room. The evening hours at Hogwarts transform these spaces into something magical beyond the usual textbook definition. Each house common room becomes a completely different world once dinner ends. Gryffindor's common room crackles with energy as students sprawl across the squishy red armchairs, their voices mixing with the pop and hiss of the fireplace. The fire itself seems to dance higher when particularly exciting stories get shared. Hufflepuff students gather in their cozy underground space, where the smell of fresh herbs drifts in from the nearby kitchens. Their circular windows show the gentle sway of grass and dandelions outside. Ravenclaw Tower buzzes with intellectual conversations that can stretch past midnight. Bronze and blue banners catch the starlight streaming through tall windows. Meanwhile, deep in the dungeons, Slytherin students relax in their emerald and silver sanctuary. The underwater views of the Black Lake create an otherworldly atmosphere as giant tentacles occasionally drift past the windows. But here's where things get really interesting. These aren't just fancy waiting rooms. Hot chocolate appears without anyone asking for it. Butterbeer sometimes materializes on side tables when the weather turns particularly cold. House elves work their quiet magic, ensuring every student feels perfectly comfortable. The fireplaces do more than provide warmth. They're enchanted to display moving photographs of Quidditch matches, magical news, and even glimpses of what's happening in other parts of the castle. Students don't just sit around staring at the flames though. Wizards' chess sets come alive with miniature armies battling across checkered boards. The pieces shout advice, complain about bad moves, and occasionally refuse to follow particularly stupid commands. Exploding snap cards create tiny fireworks that smell like cinnamon and sulfur. Gobstones spray foul-smelling liquid at losing players, which explains why some students prefer to watch rather than participate. Then there's the storytelling tradition that happens naturally. Older students share tales from their summer holidays, complete with descriptions of magical creatures they encountered, or spells they practiced at home. Some stories stretch the truth considerably, but nobody minds. A simple trip to Diagon Alley becomes an epic adventure, involving 3 dragons and a rogue chocolate frog. Letters from home create their own special moments. Owls tap against common room windows throughout the evening, delivering packages wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Homemade cookies get shared around the room, even when they're slightly stale from the long journey. Parents send newspaper clippings, magical photographs that wave enthusiastically, and care packages filled with everything from woolen socks to dung bombs. What makes these evening gatherings truly special is how naturally friendships form. First years who barely spoke during the day find themselves deep in conversation about their favorite Quidditch teams. Seventh years offer advice to younger students struggling with particularly difficult homework assignments. House boundaries matter less in these relaxed moments, though students from other houses need special permission to visit. The prefects patrol the corridors outside, but inside the common rooms, a different kind of order emerges. Students police themselves, keeping noise levels reasonable, and making sure everyone gets a chance to use the best seats by the fire. Unspoken rules develop about sharing study materials, taking turns with popular games, and respecting quiet corners where some students prefer to read. Some evenings bring unexpected entertainment. Ghosts occasionally drift through walls to share gossip from around the castle. Nearly Headless Nick might describe the latest staff meeting drama, while the Fat Friar offers encouragement to students worried about upcoming exams. The Bloody Baron rarely speaks, but his presence alone creates an atmosphere of mysterious intrigue. Weather outside affects the mood inside in fascinating ways. Thunderstorms make common rooms feel extra cozy as rain pelts the windows. Snow creates a magical hush that encourages quieter activities like card games and gentle conversations. Spring evenings fill the spaces with restless energy as students plan outdoor adventures. Personal treasures emerge during these relaxed hours. Students pull out family photographs, magical artifacts passed down through generations, and collections of unusual items gathered during their time at Hogwarts. Someone always has chocolate frogs to share, and trading cards change hands constantly. The evening conversations cover everything imaginable. Quidditch strategies get debated with intense passion, teachers' quirks provide endless entertainment, Professor Snape's dramatic cape swirls become the subject of detailed analysis. Future career plans spark dreams about becoming aurors, dragon handlers, or professional Quidditch players. As the fire burns lower and yawns become more frequent, the common room gradually empties, but homework still needs attention, and tomorrow's classes won't teach themselves. After all the excitement of exploring Hogwarts, making friends and attending magical classes, reality hits hard. Homework time arrives like an unwelcome owl tapping at your window. Every professor seems to think their subject is the only one that matters, piling on assignments that would make even Hermione Granger sweat. The moment dinner ends, students scatter to claim the best study spots. Smart ones grab tables near the fireplaces in their common rooms before the rush begins. Others head straight to the library, where competition for the prime oak tables turns into a silent battle of wills. Later rivals end up squeezed into corners or perched on uncomfortable stools, frantically scribbling notes while their backs ache. Charms homework involves practicing wand movements until your arm feels ready to fall off. Professor Flitwick expects perfect swish and flick motions for every spell. One tiny wobble and your feather might explode instead of floating gracefully. Students spend hours in front of mirrors, watching their reflection practice the same movement over and over. The lucky ones have roommates willing to critique their technique. The unlucky ones discover their mistakes during the next class when chaos erupts. Then there's potions. Professor Snape assigns essays that require memorizing ingredients, brewing times, and the exact temperature needed for each step. Miss one detail and your entire argument falls apart faster than a poorly brewed sleeping draft. Students huddle over thick textbooks, copying recipes word for word, while desperately hoping they won't mix up powdered moonstone with powdered silver unicorn horn in their notes. Herbology presents its own challenges. Professor Sprout expects detailed drawings of magical plants, complete with labels for every leaf, root, and potentially dangerous appendage. Drawing mandrakes is particularly tricky, since you can't actually look at mature ones without protective gear. Students rely on textbook illustrations and their imagination, often producing artwork that looks more like abstract expressionism than botanical studies. Defense against the dark arts homework varies depending on which professor currently holds the cursed position. Some assign practical spell practice, others demand research papers on dark creatures that make students jump at shadows for weeks afterward. The smart approach involves studying with friends, since group practice helps everyone master defensive spells more quickly. Plus, having witnesses means someone can verify you actually completed the assignment if magical mishaps destroy your work. Group study sessions become essential survival tactics. Students gather around common room tables, sharing textbooks and comparing notes while arguing over proper spell pronunciation. These gatherings often turn into informal tutoring sessions, with older students helping younger ones navigate particularly difficult concepts. House unity shines during these moments, as seventh years patiently explain advanced transfiguration theory to confused second years. Library study sessions follow strict protocols. Madam Pince tolerates no nonsense, enforcing silence with the dedication of a military sergeant. Students develop elaborate hand signal systems to communicate without speaking. Passing notes becomes an art form with clever folding techniques that hide messages from the librarian's sharp eyes. Getting caught results in immediate expulsion from the library, leaving offenders to find alternative study locations. The restricted section tempts desperate students facing impossible assignments. Accessing these forbidden books requires teacher approval, but some students attempt unauthorized browsing anyway. The risk rarely pays off, since most restricted materials deal with advanced dark magic rather than standard homework topics. Getting caught sneaking around forbidden books results in detention and house point deductions that make the entire effort counterproductive. Quiet magic becomes crucial for organization and efficiency. Simple spells keep papers sorted, quills sharpened and ink bottles from spilling across precious notes. Students learn to cast these utility spells silently, since practicing magic in common areas requires discretion. The ability to magically organize homework materials saves countless hours and prevents the panic that comes with losing important assignments. House tutoring programs provide lifelines for struggling students. Older house members volunteer to help younger ones master difficult subjects, creating mentor relationships that last throughout their Hogwarts years. These sessions often reveal that even the most confident students struggled with the same concepts, making failures feel less devastating and success more achievable. Homework deadlines create their own ecosystem of stress and creativity. Procrastinators develop impressive last-minute skills, producing acceptable work under impossible time pressure. Perfectionists spend weeks crafting single assignments, often missing other deadlines while pursuing impossible standards. The wisest students find middle ground, planning their time carefully while accepting that some assignments deserve more effort than others. Late-night cramming sessions blur together as students push past normal bedtime hours. Common rooms stay active well past curfew, filled with whispered discussions and the scratch of quills on parchment. House elves occasionally appear with warm drinks and encouragement, understanding the academic pressures students face. The satisfaction of completing a particularly challenging assignment rivals any magical achievement. Successfully mastering complex spell theory or crafting a well-researched essay builds confidence for future challenges. These small victories accumulate throughout the school year, creating a foundation of knowledge that extends far beyond homework grades. But even the most dedicated students need breaks from constant studying. Sometimes the castle itself provides perfect distractions that make homework seem less important than the adventures waiting just around the corner. Every castle worth its stone has secrets, and Hogwarts, well, it practically invented the art of hiding things in plain sight. The most famous secret passages aren't really secret anymore. Students have been whispering about them for generations. Behind the mirror on the 4th floor, there's a passage that leads straight to Hogsmeade. The one-eyed witch statue on the 3rd floor. Tap it with your wand and say Descendium. Watch her hump open up like a trapdoor. Makes sense that a school full of teenagers would find ways to sneak around, right? But here's where it gets interesting. The Marauder's map shows exactly 7 secret passages out of the castle. 7 that we know about. Former students Fred and George Weasley spent years exploring every nook and cranny, and even they admitted they probably missed some. The castle keeps growing after all. New rooms appear when needed. Old ones vanish when forgotten. Then there's the moving staircases, which aren't exactly secret but definitely mysterious. They change direction every Friday at midnight. Some say it's random, others swear there's a pattern. Third-year students often get trapped on the wrong staircase, ending up in corridors they've never seen before. The portraits try to give directions, but half of them are asleep or pretending to be. Let's not forget the Room of Requirement. This one's special because it only appears when someone really needs it. Walk past that blank wall on the 7th floor 3 times while thinking hard about what you need. A door appears. Simple as that. Students have found everything from bathrooms to entire libraries inside. The room reads your mind and gives you exactly what you're looking for. And the weird part is, 2 people can need the same room at the same time and get completely different spaces. Magic doesn't always make logical sense, but it usually makes emotional sense. The castle's architects clearly had a sense of humor. Why else would they put a door that only opens if you tickle a pear in a painting? The entrance to the kitchen sits right there in the corridor, but you'd never know it unless someone told you. House elves have been using this entrance for centuries, carrying trays of food up to the Great Hall through passages most students never see. Speaking of passages students never see, the ones behind the walls are the real mysteries. Hogwarts is essentially two castles, the one everyone knows about, and the hidden one running parallel to it. Maintenance passages, servant corridors, emergency exits that haven't been used in decades. Some of these passages are so old they predate the current castle layout. You might enter on the third floor and exit in the dungeons, completely bypassing the logical flow of the building. Filch, the caretaker, knows more about these hidden routes than anyone else alive. He's been patrolling them for decades, trying to catch students who think they're being clever. His office contains a filing cabinet stuffed with confiscated items from secret passages, dung bombs, love letters, midnight snacks, prohibited magical items. The man's like a spider sitting at the center of a web, feeling every vibration in his castle. But even Filch doesn't know everything. The Bloody Baron, Slytherin's house ghost, once mentioned passages that were sealed up centuries ago. Political reasons apparently. Wars between magical factions, rooms where dangerous experiments went wrong, areas that became too unstable to safely navigate. The strangest part, some passages seem to have their own agenda. Students report entering a passage that should lead to the Astronomy Tower, only to find themselves in the greenhouses instead, as if the castle itself was redirecting them. Maybe it was protecting them from something. Maybe it was just having fun. Recent discoveries include a passage behind a tapestry that leads to a room full of old-school records. Another one connects the Ravenclaw common room to an abandoned classroom where someone left behind hundreds of magical practice dummies. These aren't marked on any map, official or otherwise. The castle's ability to hide things extends beyond physical spaces too. Magical objects go missing for years, then turn up in impossible places. A telescope disappears from the Astronomy Tower and reappears in the dungeons. Books walk themselves from the library to random classrooms. The building seems to have its own memory, storing things where they'll be needed later. What makes all these mysteries even more fascinating is that they're still being discovered. Every year brings new students who find doors that older students swear weren't there before. The castle rewards curiosity, but it also punishes recklessness. Push too hard into areas you shouldn't explore, and you might find yourself facing magical obstacles that definitely weren't put there for student entertainment. The real question isn't how many secrets Hogwarts contains, but whether any human will ever map them all. And speaking of maps, while you're busy exploring hidden passages and secret rooms, there's another kind of competition happening right out in the open that affects every single student's daily life. The House Cup isn't just some trophy sitting in a dusty corner. It's the driving force behind every single day at Hogwarts. 4 massive hourglasses stand in the entrance hall, each filled with gems representing the 4 houses. Rubies for Gryffindor, emeralds for Slytherin, sapphires for Ravenclaw, and yellow topaz for Hufflepuff. Students check these hourglasses obsessively, watching as their house's fortunes rise and fall throughout the year. Point-earning opportunities lurk around every corner. Answer a tricky question in Transfiguration. 5 points to your house. Help a first-year find their way to the library. Another 5 points. Brew a perfect pepper-up potion on your first try. Professor Snape might grudgingly award 10 points, though he'll probably find a reason to dock them again within the hour. But here's where things get interesting. The point system isn't just about rewarding good behavior. Teachers use it as psychological warfare. Professor McGonagall might award 50 points to Gryffindor for exceptional bravery, then turn around and subtract 60 points from the same house for reckless endangerment. The math doesn't always make sense, but the message is clear. Actions have consequences. Each house develops its own point-earning strategies. Ravenclaws dominate in academic subjects, consistently racking up points for insightful answers and extra credit work. They treat every lesson like a quiz show, hands shooting up before questions are even finished. Hufflepuffs excel at the smaller, often overlooked opportunities. They're the ones helping teachers carry supplies, cleaning up after messy potions accidents, and making sure younger students feel welcome. Gryffindors swing between extremes. One day they're heroes earning massive point bonuses for stopping dark wizards, the next they're hemorrhaging points for breaking curfew or starting fights. Their hourglass looks like a heart monitor, constantly spiking up and crashing down. Slytherins play the long game, calculating every move to maximize points while minimizing risk. They've mastered the art of appearing helpful while letting other houses take the blame for mishaps. The numbers can be staggering. A single night of rule breaking might cost a house 150 points. That's equivalent to 30 perfect homework assignments or 15 brilliant classroom contributions. Students have been known to avoid their common rooms for days after losing massive points, unable to face their disappointed housemates. Teachers each have their own point-awarding personalities. Professor Flitwick hands out points like candy at Halloween, genuinely excited about every small success. Professor Snape treats points like his personal fortune, hoarding them jealously and only parting with them under extreme duress. Professor Sprout awards steady, reliable points for consistent effort, while Professor McGonagall's points come with weight and meaning behind every decision. The competitive pressure creates unexpected alliances. Students from rival houses might secretly help each other in subjects where their house is struggling. A Slytherin might tutor a Gryffindor in potions, knowing that a well-educated rival is better than a House Cup victory built on incompetence. These underground academic exchanges happen in hidden corners of the library, away from prying eyes. Mid-year point tallies can shift dramatically. Houses that seem hopelessly behind in December might surge ahead by Easter. The final weeks of term become incredibly tense, with students walking on eggshells to avoid point deductions while desperately seeking opportunities to contribute. Even the ghosts get involved, with nearly headless Nick and the Fat Friar occasionally providing helpful hints that lead to point-earning moments. Then there's the psychological aspect of watching those hourglasses change. The gems don't just appear and disappear silently, they cascade down with satisfying musical chimes when points are added, creating a moment of celebration visible to anyone passing through the entrance hall. Point deductions happen differently. The gems simply vanish, leaving behind an emptiness that seems to echo with disappointment. Some students crack under the pressure, they become point-obsessed, calculating the value of every action in gems rather than learning or friendship. Others rebel against the system entirely, deciding that house loyalty isn't worth the constant stress and competition. Most find a middle ground, caring enough to contribute but not letting the competition consume their Hogwarts experience. The final House Cup ceremony at the end-of-year feast brings everything together. Dumbledore's last-minute point awards have become legendary, sometimes completely overturning the expected results. These dramatic reversals teach students that individual courage and friendship matter more than accumulated advantages. The winning house gets their colors decorating the Great Hall and bragging rights until September. But here's the thing about all this competition and point counting. It's just preparation for something much bigger. Because while students stress over gaining and losing house points, they're actually learning to navigate the real pressures of living together in a magical castle. And speaking of castle pressures, the most intense ones happen when most students should be safely asleep in their beds. After hours in the common room and dormitories, some students just can't resist the pull of adventure. The castle after midnight transforms into something completely different. Gone are the bustling corridors filled with chatter and footsteps. Instead, empty hallways stretch endlessly, moonlight casting long shadows through tall windows. Every sound seems amplified. A dropped quill could wake half the castle, or at least that's how it feels to a nervous first-year tiptoeing through the darkness. The prefects take their patrol duties seriously. These older students march through predetermined routes, checking alcoves and listening for the telltale signs of rule breakers. They've memorized every creak in the floorboards, every blind spot where troublemakers might hide. Getting caught by a prefect means detention at minimum. House points vanish faster than chocolate frogs in a first-year dormitory. But here's the thing about teenage curiosity. It rarely calculates risk properly. Smart students bring backup plans. The legendary invisibility cloak gives its wearer complete protection from prying eyes, though not from other senses. Footsteps still echo. Breathing still makes noise. Bumping into armor still creates a thunderous crash that sends prefects running from 3 floors away. Then there's the Marauder's map, showing every person's location in real time. Knowing where Filch stalks through the dungeons or which prefect patrols the 4th floor makes midnight adventures significantly safer. Speaking of Filch, this caretaker represents every student's worst nightmare during nighttime excursions. He knows the castle's secrets better than anyone except maybe Dumbledore himself. His cat, Mrs. Norris, serves as an extension of his senses, prowling silently through corridors and reporting back suspicious activities. That cat appears from nowhere, yellow eyes gleaming in the darkness, sending rule breakers into complete panic mode. But why risk detention and lost house points? The castle holds secrets that daylight hours simply can't reveal. Hidden passages open only under cover of darkness. Portraits behave differently when they think no students are watching. Some even leave their frames entirely to visit paintings in other parts of the castle. The fat lady has been spotted gossiping with portraits 3 floors down. Sir Cadogan practices his sword-fighting moves without an audience to embarrass himself in front of. Moving staircases follow different patterns at night. During the day they shift every few minutes in seemingly random directions. After midnight, they settle into older, more mysterious routes. Some lead to floors that don't officially exist, others connect to passages that have been sealed for decades. Students who pay attention to these nocturnal patterns discover shortcuts that most wizards never knew existed. The suits of armor present their own challenges. During daylight, they stand perfectly still, decorative remnants from medieval times. Nighttime brings subtle changes. Metal creaks when students pass too closely. Some swear the helmets turn slightly, following movement through peripheral vision. Whether this represents actual magic or overactive imagination remains hotly debated among midnight wanderers. Ghosts become more active after curfew. Nearly headless Nick glides through corridors with purpose instead of his usual aimless floating. The Bloody Baron appears in locations where students rarely see him during regular hours. These spectral residents seem to appreciate the quieter atmosphere, moving freely without dodging crowds of living teenagers. Most ghosts ignore rule-breaking students entirely. They have their own mysterious business to attend to. Temperature drops significantly in certain areas after dark. The dungeons become absolutely frigid, breath visible in small puffs of vapor. Some corridors maintain normal warmth while others feel like walking through winter air. These temperature variations often indicate magical activity or hidden enchantments that remain dormant during busier periods. Library adventures require exceptional stealth. Madame Pince has enchanted the space with detection spells that activate after hours. Books whisper warnings to each other when unauthorized visitors approach. The restricted section becomes even more dangerous at night. Some volumes only open in darkness, revealing spells and information deemed too dangerous for young minds. Students who successfully navigate these magical defenses often discover knowledge that transforms their understanding of magic entirely. Kitchen raids represent the most common midnight adventure. House elves appreciate students who show genuine interest in their work, often preparing special late-night snacks for polite visitors. The portrait of the bowl of fruit conceals the entrance, though getting there requires avoiding Filch's most frequent patrol route. Common room fires burn lower, but never extinguish completely. Some students return from midnight wanderings to find others awake, sharing whispered stories of their own adventures. These quiet conversations often reveal the castle's most closely guarded secrets, passed down through generations of rule breakers. The real magic happens in those stolen moments between darkness and dawn, when the castle reveals sides of itself that daylight keeps hidden. But eventually, exhaustion wins over curiosity, and even the most adventurous students must return to their dormitories for whatever sleep remains before morning lessons begin. After a long day of classes, spell mishaps, and maybe a few detentions for good measure, the dormitories become the ultimate sanctuary. Each house has its own sleeping quarters, tucked away behind their common rooms like secret hideaways. The beds aren't just regular beds either, they're 4-poster masterpieces with thick, heavy curtains that you can pull shut for complete privacy. Perfect for when your roommate won't stop practicing their transfiguration homework out loud. The moment you step into your dormitory, you notice something magical has already happened. Your trunk sits perfectly organized at the foot of your bed, robes hung neatly on hooks, and your pet's cage clean spotless. The house elves work their magic while students attend classes, making sure everything stays tidy without anyone ever seeing them do it. They even light the fireplaces just before bedtime, so the room feels warm and cozy when you return. But here's where things get interesting. Each dormitory reflects its house personality in subtle ways. Gryffindor rooms feel bold and adventurous, with rich red hangings and golden accents that catch the firelight. Hufflepuff dormitories are the coziest, with earth-toned fabrics and plants that somehow thrive in the underground chambers. Ravenclaw towers offer the best views through tall windows, perfect for late-night stargazing between study sessions. And Slytherin. Their underwater windows in the dungeons create this mysterious green glow that makes everything feel like you're sleeping in an enchanted aquarium. The weird part is how quickly these spaces become home. Within weeks, students personalize their bed areas with family photos, favorite books and collections of chocolate frog cards. Some brave souls even smuggle in extra snacks, though the house elves usually discover these stashes and either remove them or leave gentle reminders about meal times. Roommate dynamics create their own entertainment. Every dormitory has that one person who talks in their sleep, usually reciting potion ingredients or Quidditch plays. Then there's always someone who collects something odd, beetle eyes, unusual quills, or every single copy of Asterisk, the Daily Prophet Asterisk from their first year. Room assignments stay the same throughout all 7 years, so these quirks become endearing traditions rather than annoying habits. Let's not forget the evening routines that develop naturally. Students gather around beds to share stories from home, compare notes about particularly difficult professors, or debate whether chocolate frogs taste better than peppermint toads. These conversations often stretch well past official bedtime, with voices gradually dropping to whispers as exhaustion sets in. The house elves leave subtle touches that make bedtime special. Fresh sheets appear weekly, somehow always perfectly crisp and smelling faintly of lavender or pine depending on the season. Water pitchers stay magically refilled, and small vials of dreamless sleep potion appear on nightstands when students seem particularly stressed about upcoming exams. Temperature control in the dormitories works differently than in Muggle homes. The fireplaces burn with magical flames that provide exactly the right amount of warmth without ever going out completely. Even in the deepest winter, students never wake up cold, though some rooms feel cozier than others depending on their location in the castle. Then, there's the matter of privacy curtains around each bed. These heavy drapes don't just block light and sound. They create individual sanctuaries where students can write letters home, practice quiet spells, or simply decompress from the day. Some students charm their curtains with silencing spells for complete solitude, while others leave them partially open to maintain connection with their roommates. Sleep patterns at Hogwarts differ from the Muggle world too. The magical atmosphere seems to encourage deeper, more restful sleep, though this might also result from physical exhaustion after climbing countless staircases and practicing complex spells all day. Dreams tend to be more vivid, possibly influenced by the castle's ancient magic or simply the exciting experiences that fill each day. Personal belongings scattered around dormitory rooms tell stories about each student's life. Owl feathers tucked between book pages, pressed flowers from herbology class, small trinkets bought during Hogsmeade visits. These items transform sterile sleeping spaces into genuine bedrooms filled with memories and personality. The most remarkable aspect of dormitory life is how it builds lasting friendships. Sharing living space with the same people for 7 years creates bonds that extend far beyond graduation. Late-night conversations, shared midnight snacks, and helping each other through homesickness or academic struggles forge relationships that define the entire Hogwarts experience. As heads finally hit pillows and breathing settles into peaceful rhythms, the dormitories become quiet retreats where young wizards and witches recharge for whatever magical adventures tomorrow might bring. But speaking of tomorrow, those adventures begin bright and early when hundreds of owls arrive with the morning post, creating quite the spectacle in the Great Hall. The sun barely peeks over the Scottish Highlands when the first owl arrives. Then another. Within minutes the sky fills with hundreds of feathered postal workers swooping toward Hogwarts like a living cloud of brown, grey and white. The Great Hall transforms into organized chaos as breakfast gets interrupted by the Daily Mail delivery. These aren't your ordinary post office workers. Hogwarts owls are trained professionals who can find anyone anywhere at any time. Your aunt moved to a cottage in Wales without leaving an address. No problem. Your friend transferred to a wizarding school in Bulgaria. The owl will track them down. Some of these birds have been delivering mail for decades, passing routes down through owl families like a magical postal dynasty. The morning rush starts around 6:30. Students stumble into the Great Hall still rubbing sleep from their eyes. When the first wave hits, owls dive between floating candles, dodge hanging banners, and somehow avoid crashing into each other despite the aerial traffic jam happening above everyone's heads. The coordination would make air traffic controllers jealous. Each delivery is perfectly planned. Large packages get dropped gently onto tables while letters flutter down like autumn leaves. The school owls know exactly which student sits where, even when someone decides to switch seats or visit another house table. Try to fool an owl by sitting with the Ravenclaws when you're supposed to be at Gryffindor table. The bird will find you and give you a look that says nice try, genius. Then there's the variety of mail that arrives. Care packages from worried mothers contain everything from hand-knitted sweaters to homemade cookies that somehow stay fresh despite traveling hundreds of miles. Younger students often receive encouraging letters after difficult weeks, while older students get job applications and university brochures. The Weasley twins once received a howler so loud it rattled the windows and scared a first year into dropping his porridge. Some deliveries become entertainment for the entire hall. Howlers arrive smoking and trembling, threatening to explode if not opened immediately. The recipient's face turns red before they even break the seal, knowing everyone will hear their mother's voice echoing off the enchanted ceiling. The unwritten rule is that you don't laugh at someone else's howler, but a few snickers always escape when Mrs. Weasley's voice reaches maximum volume. Newspaper deliveries bring the outside world into the castle. The Daily Prophet arrives with headlines about ministry politics, Quidditch scores, and occasionally disturbing news about dark wizards. Students crowd around copies, arguing about articles and sharing sections. The sports pages disappear fastest, especially during Quidditch season when professional league results determine who wins or loses various bets around the castle. The most impressive deliveries come during holidays and birthdays. Parents send elaborate gifts that arrive via multiple owls working together like a coordinated moving company. A single birthday cake might require 4 owls carrying it with tiny ropes, while a new broomstick arrives with 3 owls and a delivery receipt that needs signing. The logistics would impress any shipping company executive, but the system isn't perfect. Lost mail happens more often than anyone admits. Letters sometimes end up in the wrong hands when 2 students have similar names. Packages occasionally get dropped in the lake when young owls misjudge their landing approach. The school keeps a lost and found box in the owlery filled with mysterious packages that never reach their intended recipients. Students sometimes browse through it hoping to claim something interesting, though most items eventually get returned through the Owl Network's correction system. The really dedicated owls work year-round, including weekends and holidays. School owls get time off in rotation, but family owls keep working because they're personally invested in their humans. These birds develop genuine relationships with the families they serve, mourning when elderly wizards pass away and celebrating when new babies arrive. Some owls serve the same family for generations, becoming part of the household furniture. Weather creates the biggest delivery challenges. Scottish storms can ground even the most experienced owls, leading to mail delays that leave students anxiously waiting for news from home. Snow makes flying difficult, while rain can damage letters despite protective spells. The owls adapt by flying in formation during bad weather, with experienced birds leading younger ones through treacherous conditions. Smart students learn to tip their owls with owl treats or gentle head scratches. Well-treated owls remember kind students and might deliver their mail faster or more carefully. Mistreat an owl, and you might find your letters arrive slightly damp or with tiny beak marks in the envelope. These birds have long memories and their own sense of justice. The morning mail ritual connects Hogwarts students to families, friends, and the wider wizarding world. Each delivery brings news, love, worry, and sometimes trouble from beyond the castle walls. As breakfast winds down and owls begin their return journeys, students pocket their letters and prepare for another day of classes, knowing tomorrow will bring another feathered invasion right on schedule. Speaking of schedules, once the mail settles and breakfast plates clear away, it's time for the real magic to begin again. Morning comes fast at Hogwarts. One day you're nervous about your first charms class, and suddenly you're an expert at Wingardium Leviosa. Time moves differently in a castle where staircases change direction and portraits give you directions to classes you didn't even know existed. The rhythm becomes second nature after a while. Wake up to house elves tidying your dormitory. Rush down to breakfast where hundreds of owls drop letters into your porridge. Dodge Peeves throwing dung bombs in the corridors. Survive Snape's glare in potions. Practice Quidditch until your broom feels like an extension of your body. Makes sense, right? But here's what makes Hogwarts truly special. No 2 September days are identical, even when they follow the same schedule. Yesterday's herbology lesson might involve harmless flutterby bushes. Today, Professor Sprout casually mentions the venomous tentacula in Greenhouse 3 just ate someone's homework. Literally ate it. The plant burped afterward. Weather changes everything too. Sunny mornings make Astronomy Tower climbs bearable, while storm clouds turn care of magical creatures into an adventure nobody signed up for. Ever tried studying hippogriff behavior when lightning keeps spooking them? Those proud creatures become surprisingly jumpy when thunder echoes across the grounds. Hagrid just laughs and tells everyone to bow deeper. Then there's the unpredictability factor that keeps students on their toes. Dumbledore might announce a surprise feast because Mars aligned with Jupiter. McGonagall could transform into a cat mid-lecture just to prove a point about transfiguration concentration. Quirky? Absolutely. Boring? never. Let's not forget how quickly friendships develop in this environment. Shared experiences create bonds faster than any friendship potion Professor Snape could brew, getting lost together in moving staircases, helping each other remember passwords that change weekly, trading chocolate frog cards during 15-minute breaks. These moments build lasting connections. House competition adds another layer of daily excitement. Point totals fluctuate constantly throughout each day. Gryffindor loses 50 points before breakfast because someone got caught sneaking around after curfew. Ravenclaw gains 30 points during morning charms for exceptional spell work. Hufflepuff earns 20 points for helping first years find their classrooms. Slytherin gets 15 points because Snape felt generous. The hourglasses never stop changing. Academic pressure builds gradually too. First week assignments seem manageable until you realize every professor expects excellence. Defense against the dark arts homework involves practicing shield charms. Potions requires memorizing ingredient properties and their reactions. Herbology demands understanding plant life cycles and magical properties. History of magic, well, staying awake during Professor Binns' lectures counts as an achievement. Library visits become essential survival tactics. Madame Pince's strict silence rules actually help concentration, even if her suspicious glares make everyone nervous. Study groups form naturally around oak tables where students share notes and quiz each other. The restricted section remains tempting but off-limits without teacher permission. Evening routines provide comfort after challenging days. Common room fires crackle warmly while students play wizard chess or finish homework assignments. Older students share stories about previous year's adventures. House ghosts float through offering encouragement or random historical facts. Nearly Headless Nick particularly enjoys discussing medieval tournament mishaps. Meal times offer social breaks from academic stress. Great Hall conversations range from Quidditch strategies to gossip about which teacher might leave next. Food appears magically, but friendships develop through shared laughter over butterbeer mustaches and exploding snap accidents. Dining together creates community bonds stronger than any house rivalry. Night brings different magic entirely. Dormitory curtains provide privacy for homesick moments or excited whispers about tomorrow's plans. Some students write letters home describing their adventures. Others practice wand movements under blankets, hoping tomorrow's spell work improves. Dreams often feature flying broomsticks and talking portraits. And the weird part is how normal all this extraordinary stuff becomes. Moving staircases, just part of navigation. Ghosts in bathrooms, annoying but manageable. Paintings that give directions helpful most days, sarcastic on others. Your definition of normal completely shifts when magic surrounds everything. Each sunrise brings fresh possibilities for discovery, new spells to master, magical creatures to understand, friendships to deepen, house points to earn or lose, mysteries to uncover in secret passages, pranks to plan or avoid, academic challenges to overcome through determination and teamwork. Teachers continue surprising students with creative lesson plans. Flitwick might demonstrate advanced charm work that makes entire classrooms sparkle. Sprout could introduce carnivorous plants that sing while they digest. McGonagall transforms ordinary objects into extraordinary examples of transfiguration mastery. Even Snape occasionally shows grudging approval for exceptional potion brewing. Well, September days at Hogwarts establish patterns that last throughout the school year. Students learn to balance academic responsibility with magical wonder. They discover personal strengths while supporting house unity. Most importantly, they realize that extraordinary adventures await those brave enough to embrace magic's endless possibilities. Every dawn promises another chapter in their Hogwarts story, where ordinary students become extraordinary wizards and